Nau mai, haere mai, and a very warm welcome to what is our final council meeting for 2024. Wonderful to have so many of you with us here today. We've got a very full agenda and some great decisions that will be being made. Just a reminder that this meeting is being live streamed on Council's Facebook page. And if we could all please stand for our opening karakia. Te taua mai e ngā, te taua mai e ngā, te taua mai e roto, te taua mai e wapo, kia tau ai te mauritu, te mauri ora, ki te katoa, auni e hui e tai e. We have no apologies today. Great to have a full house. Are there any conflicts of interest? Excellent. So we're thrilled to have three groups here today to speak to us in the public forum. And I would like to invite up, first off, Te Kaha Hawaikarangi and Matt Mullaney from Mana Ahuriri and Te Tawhenua o Te Whanganui o Arutu, who are going to speak in support of our treaty bill submission, which we are deciding on today. So welcome to both of you.
E aku rangatira, e aku mana tēnā koutou. E mihi ana te rangi Māori ki te kotahitanga, ki te maramatanga, hei huarahi mō tātou katoa, tēnā tātou katoa. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge e te kahika, Kirsten, tēnā koe, koutou hoki e ngā kai kaunihira, kua wharikitia tēnei tēnei tono ki te whiti kōrero kia koutou nō reira tēnei kāmihi kia koutou. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I want to begin by acknowledging Napier City Council for the thought and care you have put into drafting your submission opposing the principles of Treaty of Waitangi Bill. It takes leadership to engage with such a significant kaupapa in a way that reflects the weight and importance of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. Your work demonstrates a strong sense of responsibility to uphold its mana and its place as a cornerstone of justice and equity in our society. As the chair of Mana Ahuriri Trust, representing the 7 hapu of this rohe, I want to acknowledge the way you have approached Te Tiriti as a foundation for partnership and governance. By drafting this submission, you show respect for the commitments made in 1840 and recognise the shared responsibility we all have to honour those commitments today. This is not just about opposing a bill. It is about standing for the integrity of Te Tiriti and protecting the principles that guide how we move forward together. I also want to highlight the role of tangata tiriti in this kaupapa. When Te Tiriti was signed, it was an agreement between Māori and the Crown to work together, to bring the strengths of both tangata whenua and tangata riti into a shared future. What you've done here is an example of the partnership in action, listening, considering the voices of tangata whenua, drafting a submission that seeks to uphold justice, equity, and mutual respect. When we stand together like this, it strengthens the foundations of fairness and respect for everyone in our community. Not just Māori. It shows that we can navigate these challenges together in the spirit of kotahitanga. Your leadership here sends a clear message, not just to Māori, but to everyone in our rohe, that the principles matter. They are not just something to be redefined or diluted for convenience. They're about partnership, equity, and doing the right by each other. And your stance in this submission reflects that. It's about standing for something that's bigger than politics or headlines. It's about protecting the foundations of justice and equality or equitable outcomes that make our community stronger. Nō reira, e ngā rangatira, ngā mihi nui kia koutou, mō tō koutou tūkaha, tō koutou aroha, me tō koutou whakaaro rangatira. Your actions honour not only the intent of Te Tiriti, but also the trust and aspirations of the people it seeks to protect. I just want to briefly touch on now the importance of Te Tiriti and the principles that we follow today. Te Tiriti o Waitangi is the founding document of Aotearoa New Zealand, a constitutional agreement entered into between the British Crown representing Queen Victoria and rangatira Māori exercising their tino rangatiratanga as sovereign leaders of their hapu. It established a framework for governance, partnership and mutual respect, recognising the authority of Māori over their lands, resources and people, while providing the Crown the right to govern its settlers. This historic agreement represents not only a commitment to partnership, but also the aspirations of unity, equity and justice that underpin our country's identity. The principles for our constitutional document have been carefully developed since its signing 180 years ago. This journey has been one of deliberate and through processes of the highest level, marked by contributions of legal experts, judges, historians, and Māori advocates, from the pivotal land case in 1987, which was presided by 5 judges, including the most highly respected judge in New Zealand's history, Justice Robin Cook, whom delivered the leading judgment which defined the principles that we follow today of partnership, protection, and participation. Following on from the 1987 case, leaders in both law and history have continued to shape the principles through decades of rigorous legal scrutiny, thoughtful deliberation, and refine the application of Te Tiriti in our modern context. Justice Joe Williams, now a member of the Supreme Court, has been instrumental in integrating tikanga Māori into New Zealand's legal framework. His judgments emphasise that tikanga is not merely a cultural consideration, but a foundational part of understanding and applying the principles of Te Tiriti. This work reinforces the importance of evolving the Te Tiriti principles in ways that honour Māori worldviews. Equally significant is the scholarship of Dame Claudia Orange. Her meticulous research has deepened public and judicial understanding of Te Tiriti's history, historical context, and its modern applications. Her work has guided judicial rulings, Waitangi Tribunal findings, and public disclosures, ensuring that Te Tiriti remains at the heart of New Zealand's governance. Again, the principles of partnership, protection, and participation have emerged through decades of rigorous legal scrutiny, thoughtful legislative enactments, and meaningful engagement with Māori and non-Māori alike. They represent a foundation upon which our shared future is built. It is within this context of what has just been stated that the inadequacies of the latest Treaty Principles Bill become starkly evident. Unlike the decades-long inclusive process of our greatest minds and respected leaders that have shaped the current principles, this bill was developed hastily without meaningful engagement or expert input. This is not a true conversation about Te Tiriti. It is a discussion disguised as dialogue, yet narrowly focused on a principles bill crafted by a single group lacking expertise in the matter. It is an approach that seeks to ignore the collective wisdom, legal understanding, and lived experiences that have informed Te Tiriti principles for generations. The lack of genuine engagement with Māori, constitutional scholars, and the wider public reflects a significant departure from the thoughtful and robust approach that Te Tiriti demands and deserves. The bill seeks to undermine principles that have stood the test of time, replacing them with definitions crafted in isolation. Such an approach not only disregards the legal and historical processes that have guided us to this point, but also risks eroding trust and partnership that Te Tiriti embodies. It is an ideological approach that ignores our history, dismisses established facts, and overlooks the very inequities and injustices that the current Te Tiriti principles are intended to address and remedy. By implementing this bill, it undermines the foundations of equity, fairness, and mutual respect that are essential to our shared future. By this council opposing the bill, you honour not only the founding document of our country, but also the integrity of Te Tiriti and the generations of leaders, advocates, and jurists who have shaped Te Tiriti principles with care, expertise, and a deep sense of justice. As we navigate this challenging time, it is heartening to know that we have the support of our council, who understand that the strength of our city lies in its diversity and its ability to honour our nation's founding document. Your stance is not just supportive of Māori, it is supportive of justice, equity, and the values that define us as people of Ahuriri Napier. In closing, I want to reaffirm Mana Ahuriri's support for your submission. Your leadership and advocacy are a beacon of hope and an example of what genuine partnership looks like. Let us continue to stand together to protect the integrity of Te Tiriti o Waitangi and to build a future where its principles are not only preserved, but fully realised. Tēnā koutou katoa.
Tēnā tātou te whānau. Kei te tautoko au ngā mihi, o te kīngi o Mana Ahuriri, ko te kaha Hoaikirangi. Ko rua te paia ko te whanga, he kāinga tō te ata, he kāinga ka awatia, he kāinga ka ahiahi e tamaei. Mai ngā pā hākui mā hākoroma, ko hei pipi ki te raki, ko o tātara ki te tonga, ko kohu ki te uru, tai atu ki mataurua hau ki te rāwhitie, e mihi kau ana kia koutou. Hoi anō e te whaia, ko Gillian Cottrell tērā, oki atu rā, moi mai rā, moi mai rā. E te kāhika me o koutou kai kaunihira o te kaunihira o Ahuriri, ngā mihi mata kui i tēnei ata. Ko Matt Mullaney tōku ingoa, no ngā hapu toko whetū Ahuriri, ko au te tumu whakarai o te tai whenua o te whanganui arotu. Good morning, Mayor Wise and councillors. Thank you for your invitation to speak to the council regarding both your submission and the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi Bill. Te tai whenua o te whanganui arotu was established on the 10th of August 1989. It is mandated by the 8 marae of Te Whanganui Arotu to advance the development, independence and prosperity of Māori for the greater good of the region. The mission of the organisation is kia tupu, kia hua, kia puawai, to grow, build and sustain prosperous, vibrant and culturally strong whānau, hapu and marae. With regard to Te Tiriti o Waitangi, I want to acknowledge the great strides that the Napier City Council has made in building strong relationships with mana whenua and learning more about our history. It is the view of the tai whenua that it is generally fulfilling its obligations to maintain and improve opportunities for Māori to contribute to local government decision-making processes under Section 4 of the Local Government Act 2002 and its own significance and engagement policy. On behalf of Te Tai Whenua o Te Whanganui Arotu, the organisation wishes to affirm and support the Napier City Council submission regarding the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi Bill. I will provide a comment on the treaty's significance and speak directly to the reasons the Tai Whenua supports the Council submission and what the Council submission means to mana whenua. Te Tiriti o Waitangi is the founding document of this nation. It is a binding agreement between the Crown and Māori. It provided a constitutional basis for non-Māori to establish a government in Aotearoa. Through Parliament, the Napier City Council exists on this basis. Historically, the treaty principles were an attempt to reconcile the differences between the Te Reo and English versions of the treaty, to give effect to the treaty's spirit and intent in contemporary issues, and to promote a partnership between the Crown and Māori for the betterment of all New Zealanders. The Coalition Government's Treaty Principles Bill seeks to redefine in law the meaning of te tiriti by replacing the existing treaty principles with new treaty principles without the free, prior and informed consent of Māori. By imposing a contested definition of the three articles, the bill seeks to rewrite the treaty itself. The Treaty Principles Bill would have the effect of unilaterally changing the meaning of te tiriti and its effect in New Zealand law. This is the nuclear option and would be extremely damaging to New Zealand's social cohesion and would destroy 5 decades worth of our nation's progress. The bill is characterised by ill foresight, ideologically driven policy, and a complete detachment from an evolving body of jurisprudence and academic research on the subject. The Napier City Council's submission does an excellent job of summarising the reasons why the bill should not proceed. They are: Principle 2 retroactively confines Māori rights to those recognised in 1840, disregarding the broader scope of tino rangatiratanga beyond treaty settlements. It also attempts to exclude the courts, which play a crucial role in safeguarding the civil rights of Indigenous people and all New Zealanders. Principle 3, the right to equality as it is conveyed in the bill, is inconsistent with the Article 2 guarantee to Māori of tino rangatiratanga, chieftainship, self-determination, political authority, and to have their tikanga, customs, values and customary law, recognised and protected in New Zealand law. In terms of the process, we agree with the Council that the bill's policy analysis is flawed, developed without the free, prior and informed consent of Māori, and will likely foster distrust in public institutions. A successful liberal democratic society fosters trust in institutions and encourages citizen participation in democracy. By imposing a contested definition of the treaty and failing to recognise the pre-existing Māori rights that were affirmed under Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the bill is divisive, takes us backwards, and would have a detrimental impact on Napier. By the Council voting in support of its submission on the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi Bill, the Napier City Council is leading by example by continuing to foster trust and promote greater accountability between the Council, mana whenua and Māori. We agree that mana whenua play a significant role in the future of Napier. We are leaders and economic players, and as decision makers, we stand ready to play our role in making Napier the best place in the country to work, play and thrive. As people of Napier and New Zealand, we are at our best when we acknowledge our differences whilst working together for our common good. The principles of fairness, inclusiveness and social justice are not merely aspirational ideals. They are the bedrock of a thriving, united community. By committing to these values, the Napier City Council affirms its readiness to play a pivotal role in shaping a future where all voices are heard and all communities feel valued, including Māori. Supporting the submission represents more than a procedural decision. It is a declaration of the Council's dedication to honouring the legacy of Te Tiriti o Waitangi and its vision for a cohesive, equitable Napier. Let us seize this moment and to reflect the best of our collective aspirations. In conclusion, Te Tai Whenua Te Whanganui Arotu, along with the Manahuriri Trust, wishes to affirm and support the Napier City Council's submission regarding the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi Bill. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou katoa. Ia te kahura, o te moana, ue a mai, ai a pānia, ka tia o mai. E marama pai, puta orere wai, mai a pānia. E tūrehu, e pūratahu, aue aue, e pānia, tahu I poe, ka tia ho mai. E marama pai, puta orere wai, mai a pānia. Puta orere wai, mai a pānia. Nō reira, kia kaha, kia maia, kia mano nui roto I o koutou mahi, e mahi whakahirera, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora. Thank you so much to all of you for taking time out of your days to come and support and endorse our submission to the Principals Bill. And I do want to just reaffirm Napier City Council's commitment to the partnership and the relationship that we have been developing and seeking to ensure is a pivotal part of our decision making here for all of the people of Ahuriri Napier. So we truly appreciate you all being here today. Kia ora, ngā mihi, thank you very much. I would now like to invite Angie Denby and Sue MacDonald from the Ahuriri Estuary Protection Society to present to us. Welcome very much, ladies.
Kia ora koutou. From the big picture to a more local picture. Kia ora koutou. I'm Angie Denby, the chair of the Ahuriri Estuary Protection Society Incorporated. And here with me today is Lynn Anderson, one of our committee, and John Sheen, long-time conservationist, devoted lifetime person. Okay, so we are here to give you a presentation about our feelings to do with the expressway going across the estuary. Right, let me gather myself. Oh, the mouse. Is it? I'm a bit overwhelmed from the previous.
How do we get the next slide?
Gemma, how do we get the next slide? With the Sorry about this, everyone. What are you pressing?
Here we go.
Thank you. Right, we're underway.
You went through
Oh, I've gone too far. Here we are. Right. Okay, so our society is involved with a large range of restorative, protective and educational activities in Ahuriri Estuary. We network and collaborate with a range of stakeholders and often engage in submission process. Yes, I've done it. As you are aware, the 2022 Deed of Settlement with Ahuriri Hapu, the Crown recognises the role of Ahuriri Hapu as kaitiaki and will establish a permanent statutory committee, Te Comiti Murawai o Te Whanga, which has been in place now and has produced a 3-year plan. And their role is to promote protection and enhancement of the environmental and other values of the Ahuriri Estuary. And yourselves are part of that committee. Right.
As the slide shows, the estuary has a long-standing record of being recognised as a nationally significant wildlife refuge and conservation area. It's also significant to national fisheries. And estuaries of this type and value are really rare in the lower North Island, especially on the east coast. It's an absolute gem, and we're just so lucky to have it here. Put the next one.
Yes, just delayed.
Sorry. So what lives here? There are numerous species of bird. Many of them are endemic, that's found only in New Zealand. We're also lucky enough to have several species of migratory bird, significantly the bar-tailed godwit that migrates here flying non-stop from its breeding grounds in Alaska. They arrive around September. Most of them leave again around March. A few winter over, mostly the young ones. We usually get about 300 here, and that is about how many we have here right now.
Right. In terms of the fish species, they tend to be a forgotten aspect of the estuary. They make an important contribution to the marine ocean fisheries, and perhaps you haven't thought about it, but these young fish swim in and out between the estuary and the ocean. They have it as a feeding ground, it's a nursery and a breeding ground for young ocean-going fish. And of those, there are 6 commercially valuable species in the estuary.
There are also many macroinvertebrates, and they're certainly often part of nature that's not thought of there. These provide vital food for fish and birds. Many of them live in the mud, and if that mud is saturated with too much sediment, it stifles whatever is living in the mud.
Right, you'll be very familiar with these ongoing issues, which we've been and spoken about with you in the past. The sediment, nutrients and toxins that come in from the upper estuary. Presence of invasive species, the tube worm in particular. Heavy metal pollution, untreated stormwater and intermittent sewage releases. So, learnings from the past. The last expressway build 20 years ago filled in at least 2/3 of the estuary width, which greatly compromised water flow to the upper estuary and water clarity. So on the left there, you'll see the historic embankment bridge, which is a proper full-span bridge. And then below that, if you look, you'll see the filled-in expressway, which has 3 narrow concrete culverts allowing the water to move to and fro. So the photo on the right shows you what it looks like. 2/3, 3/4 of the way across was filled in to build the Prior Expressway, and a tiny little bit on the right there, it's hard to give you a proper picture there, is a little spanned bridge where water flows through. So at the time, a full span bridge was recommended, but that was not built to do with dollars.
The map on the, I just wanted the pointer. There we go. The map on the right shows the area commonly known as the Scrapes, or as Napier City Council refers to it as the West Shore Wildlife Reserve. And this green line here is the current expressway. Here shows the channel going leading to the upper estuary. The yellow line here at 232 metres, this is where the godwits mostly roost at high tide on that island, sometimes here, sometimes they're nearer the walkway. Recently they've actually been up here a little bit, but they like a full clear 360 to roost. They don't like vegetation or weeds around them. And the estuary has very limited places for godwits to roost at high tide. As you'll be aware, this area was modified when the Watchman Road extension went in as mitigation. So when we have a godwit event, Welcome or Farewell the Godwits, we invariably have about 60 or 80 people attend. We take them up onto the stop bank that doesn't disturb the birds at all. And there's actually great tourist potential here, and it would be a great shame to see that go. And many people are just in awe of seeing these birds. It's really lovely to see. And I like to think that Napier really cherishes having the godwits here. We have all those metal godwits at the roundabout and the next corner going down to the airport. The new airport building, I believe, signifies a godwit in flight. There's the old historic NAC godwit tucked away in a corner down there. And the cathedral bells ring out to welcome them. And where else in the world can you go virtually downtown to see godwits? So if this road was widened to encroach on the Scrapes area, how much impact it would have on this area as a feeding and resting area for birds? Well, it's really unknown, but it certainly wouldn't be a positive impact. If it was done in the summertime, it would be a disaster. If it was done in the winter, it might not be so bad when most of the birds have left, most of the godwits have left. But there are, of course, many species that stay here year-round. So any interference would not be good. Just moving on to the second bullet, if the road's widened across the main channel, where Angie alluded to the 3 culverts before, no doubt those culverts would just become longer and further restrict the tidal flow to the upper channel. And John is here to answer your questions about that, the effect that would have when we get to questions. I don't know if any environmental impact studies are going to be done on this project, maybe not, the way Fast Track's going. Also, any construction would greatly increase sediment, the vibration and disturbance from piling, and the runoff from the bridge, the runoff would increase. And of course, as I said, if the sediment on the mud, whatever's in the mud dies. If the extension goes to the east, we're doing a project there with the Hawke's Bay Regional Council where we're monitoring a very rare native plant, Thyridia ripens. And that's actually a really interesting little area. It's probably seen as wasteland, but it's thought there's a certain amount of tide that comes up from underneath, or otherwise that plant wouldn't have survived there for that long. Is that me?
To change the page. Thank you. So this is what we would like to see. We'd like to see the Napier City Council actually advocate for the estuary in alignment with the Ahuriri Hapu Deed of Settlement, your bylaws, policies and plans of the recent past. We'd like you to gather information necessary to the relevant to the necessity of widening the road, if it must go ahead, to ensure that robust compliance measures are adhered to and that there are mitigating factors. So, last one. So, we would like to see no expressway extension between Prebinson Drive and Watchman Road. We would like you to recognise that the traffic statistics don't warrant it. That piece of road is really not being observed to be congested. The traffic flows freely along there. The estuary requires your protection for climate change resilience, flood protection and carbon sequestration, fulfilling our commitments to climate change. And we want you to acknowledge that the protection of the estuary is bigger than just wildlife preservation and the physical site. It's for human and cultural well-being. Natural landscape values must be protected. And a thought I had on driving here, how can such a small, unnecessary, expensive piece of road be allowed to cause further disturbance to our already compromised Ahuriri estuary, Te Whanganui a Orotu? Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming today and sharing your views and concerns with us. I know that they are shared widely throughout our community. We do meet with Waka Kotahi, NZTA, who are, of course, doing the project, the expressway, on a regular basis. And it was raised with them at our catch-up this week that we would like them to engage with yourselves now, so that you can have these conversations with them. And obviously we are committed to ensuring that we support and relay your concerns and views to them as well. So rest assured, yeah, we are hearing you, and we will be working alongside you to ensure that Waka Kotahi are also aware of what your concerns are and how we can work together to allay those. And certainly I understand you raising the issue of whether that part of the expressway extension is actually required. So I would be interested to receive some more information around that as well. So I'll follow up on that.
Great, thank you. Those are music to our ears.
Very good. I will just open up in case councillors have any questions. Councillor Bogue.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much for that. A really good condensation of all the issues, a summary of the issues. Just a couple of things. For people who are watching this, they may not be aware of the distance that the Godwits actually travel to get here and from. So if you wouldn't mind repeating that, for the record. And the other thing that I want to know is what sort of response have you had from the local MPs when I know you have spoken to them about it also? What sort of response did you get?
Well, shall I tell you about the Godwits first? That they breed in Alaska, and they have no doubt have done for thousands of years. They've been, in 2007, they put a tracker on a single female bird, and that was when they first realised that these birds actually flew non-stop from Alaska to their wintering ground. But in more recent years, they've put the technology's improved so much the transmitters now just weigh a few grams, and they've been able to track quite a few of them, and so they can follow their migration, literally look at it on a screen as the bird's flying across the Pacific. On the way back, they stop at the Yellow Sea, and that's where they, China, North Korea, South Korea, and that's where they run into a lot of trouble because so much coastal land has been reclaimed. That's like a fuel stop. They're there for about 5 or 6 weeks, and then the final journey, which is a 5 or 6 days flight to their breeding grounds. It's very finely tuned, the timing with the burst of insects in Alaska, and of course climate change is making that burst come earlier, and so that's something else that's up again. We could easily lose these birds, yeah.
I'll just respond to the question about seeing the MP. Our time with her was very condensed because of things outside our control. She was late and she had a big group waiting. She wasn't really wanting to listen. She just wanted to tell us about what was happening. And one thing she said was, well, it might never happen. So we didn't really feel that we got heard or a good response.
I will certainly, when my catch-ups with her, I will have an ongoing conversation with her about it as well. Angie.
Sorry, what was the question?
No, about the
upper estuary.
Yeah.
Or the upper estuary? Yeah, it's in relation to the first bridge that was put in, and part of it is solid fill material and part of it's culverts. But what it's done, in the time I was working for the Department of Conservation and with Hans Rook, certainly noticed quite a change in the tide level in the top half of the estuary, way up back towards Bay View. And what was happening, it was like a throttle. The new causeway and the bridge was like a throttle on the water flows at high tide going west. And so it's actually had an impact on the upper estuary in terms of dropping the level, and it's very, very shallow up there. But it's dropped it by about 5 to 6 inches, 150 mils, 15 centimetres. So this additional work is going to add to that. So, you know, we're stuck with the current bridge, and I use it quite a bit myself. There's nothing wrong with the current bridge there, but adding to it's going to add to that particular problem, and it's often quite difficult to accurately determine from an ecological perspective what that impact is. So it's something that none of us would have predicted at the time.
Thank you very much for that. I will close for questions now. I would like to thank you, Lynn, Angie and John, for coming to present to us today. It's much appreciated, and just reassure you that we are listening and we'll be working alongside with you. And the work that you do at our beautiful estuary is very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, we have Peter Grant, the chair of our Positive Ageing Group, here to do our final public forum today. So welcome, Peter. I understand we have an apology from Lexia, and Margot will be joining you up the front. So it's lovely to see you both.
Morning, Your Worship, councillors and staff. Thank you for this opportunity to address you today. The main purpose of our briefing today is to update you on PASAG, on our progress, and give you a chance to ask us any questions, make any suggestions, and to redirect us if there is something that you want us to give more attention to. As Her Worship said, we planned that Whaia Lexia would be here with me today as co-chairs to have this briefing. However, there's been a bereavement in her family, and Whaia is at her marae supporting her whānau. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the work that Michelle did in getting us started, and the support she gave us in developing our initial plan, getting us recognised by the World Health Organisation, and then getting us involved with the age-friendly survey sponsored by the World Health Organisation. We were very sad to lose her, as the Mayor knows, but equally, we're very thankful for the support that Margot and Rachel now give us. Unfortunately, Rachel can't be here today, and we wish her and her son well after his unfortunate accident. Our meetings of the PASAG are continuing bi-monthly. We have a good core group of about a dozen organisations who are very committed to this project and the interests of the people in it. We have a great team and we have some very enthusiastic discussions, I can assure you. Firstly, let me address the age-friendly survey. As you're aware, we took part in the World Health Organisation's age-friendly survey. This was conducted in May and June of 2024. We had 354 responses completed, more females than males, and a wide range from 65 to 100 in age. Some of the key findings were in housing, of the respondents, 88.7 were homeowners and 11.3% were renting. There was a high satisfaction rate in the housing area in relation to access and the facilities in the people's homes. So housing from that perspective was not an issue. Mobility, 91.8% of the respondents drive and 16% use mobility aids. Transport was a common struggle for many. It's an area clearly needing focus within our environment and needing innovation, because the standard things we're using don't seem to be working as we would wish. It was the lowest area of satisfaction and needs a lot of attention. And from our perspective, the Hawke's Bay Regional Council needs to be much more involved in this project than they are at the moment. Financial stability, again, was identified as a common struggle across all clusters. The next steps. Napier can look to participate in further studies of different cluster groups. Professor Neville from Te Pukenga has indicated that he is very keen to do a study of cluster groups, with his time being pro bono. Napier City Council costs would be for staff time, PASAG time, venue, catering, and we could look for funding for that. We can, or the council can, redo the study at some further stage. Maybe we do it each year. Maybe that may be too often, but we would like to do further surveys to measure progress. It could be interesting in any future case studies to see if there's a link between employment and education. And very useful to be involved in the survey, and we do need to do some more dissecting of the results. I think it was a good process and we got some encouraging information. Margot will cover for fire.
Right, so I'm just going to quickly go through some of the things that we've been working with PASAG on over the year and some of the things that we've achieved. We've had approval for the Office for Seniors for Napier to incorporate the age-friendly logo in their merchandise, buildings, age-friendly shops. And so PASAG has also had permission to have Ahuriri Napier put on the logo. So that's kind of the new way that things are going. Instead of positive ageing, we're now talking about age-friendly. And Grey Power's been working quite closely with the Office for Seniors on age-friendly shops. And once that happens, they will have these age-friendly logos up on their windows. It's a process that they have to go through. Out of the action plan, PASAG's been working on emergency preparedness. The project started. There were 3 engagement sessions in November with giveaway emergency packs, and you can see in the photos there, those are the 3 sessions that we did, and we had a really great response to that, and there were more sessions planned in early 2025. We've also been talking to people about hubs and really pushing neighbourhood support as well at those sessions. Many of you will know that we've been holding a silver screen series. These were equally really popular. Sadly, we didn't do our third one in December. It was a little bit tricky to find a Christmas movie that everyone in PASAG would agree on. So we agreed that we would move it into the new year, and maybe there have been suggestions for a Kiwiana movie and maybe a classic war movie as well. PASAG will be looking for more funding once we do the final two sessions, because they have been seen as being really popular, and they're a great way for people to come and connect. And so the MTG is a great venue for that as well. You will also know that we had a great day for IDOP, the International Day of Older Persons. It was a huge success, lots and lots of positive feedback, and we're probably thinking that it's going to be a hard act to follow in 2025, so everyone's going to be putting their thinking caps on. Age Concern's been running their Stay Safe Driving. You will be aware that the positive ageing strategy is not just the Napier City Council. It's quite a few other organisations have pieces that they deliver, and Age Concern has run their Stay Safe Driving. And the only thing that I haven't kind of got in there is about quite a few members of PASAG have been attending an online WHO age-friendly training session. It's been going on over the last 12 weeks. My friend Peter here has written in the notes, frankly, I found it a bit simplistic. I'm not sure if I should be saying that. But I think what a lot of people found, a lot of our PASAG members found, was that Napier City is actually a long way in front of a lot of other cities in terms of being age-friendly and the work that they're doing in the age-friendly space. Over to lovely Peter.
Okay, upcoming activities, we would like to audit our action plan, and we'll do a form of audit based on where to from, and so we can establish where to from now in most of the areas we're working in. With communications, working with the council comms team to improve our communications with the community is a target, and through available media. We want regular articles in the neighbourhood circular, radio sessions with Radio Ganata being looked at, and looking at doing presentations at rest homes to get them motivated and working on ideas on how they might involve others. Linking with the community, we're trying to increase that as well with aqua fitness for older people. We've had presentations from staff, and we'll be encouraging attendance for various groups, and it's good for the pools and it's good for the older people. Movies, these are a greater interaction, need to get more organisations, and we need to get vehicles committed to transporting people to them, because a lot of the people from rest homes or whatever are being restricted, and it's getting all those clubs and things who have got vehicles out there sitting doing nothing to get their people to these movies. Involving others. We're highlighting trying to involve others, such as A3A have joined the team, the swimming pool team for fitness fellowship, looking at cost for seniors. We want to do some study groups at retirement villages and rest homes, get their residents involved, and maybe have some activities at the villages that older people in the community might be able to be involved in. So it's good advertising for them as well. So yeah, I think it's a very positive update, I hope. There's a lot to do. The people we've got involved in it are really involved, and there's a lot of commitment to us making further steps for the older people in our community. That's about it.
That's it.
That's great. Thank you very much, Peter and Margot. And certainly we appreciate all the work that you do with the other organisations that are part of PASAG. And with our ageing population, it just becomes more and more important. So we support everything that you do. I will just open up very quickly if there's any questions from councillors. No? Okay. Look forward to working alongside you again and supporting the committee going forward into 2025. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for all your work, team.
Councillor Grego's doing all right too.
Thank you. Now, only one procedural announcement from myself, that agenda item number 8 has been withdrawn because Wallace Property Development have withdrawn their objection to council's proposal to place a bus shelter at the temporary stop on Dalton Street. There have been no other objections for council to consider, and the report was only responding to the process for objections under the Local Government Act and is now redundant. So we will no longer be debating that. Are there any minor matters not on the agenda? Any announcements by management? Confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on Tuesday the 19th of November. If I could have a mover and second. Thank you, Councillor Tariha and Councillor Gregg. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Right, well, we'll crack into the first of our agenda items. I'd invite Luke Johnson to come and present on the fire control bylaw. Welcome, Luke.
Through you, Mayor Wise, can I just draw your attention to, I think there has been some technical issues with getting Rachel Horton online this morning, and I just wondered if we could check in and make sure she was available.
We will endeavour to get her online. I think we will continue while we, Welcome, Luke.
Kia ora. The purpose of this report is to seek your approval to revoke the fire control bylaw from 2021 in accordance with the Local Government Act, Section 152B. As you can see from my report, we've been through a consultation process as required under the Act with FENZ, and through that consultation process, we realised that out of all the Hawke's Bay councils, Napier were the only ones still utilising a fire control bylaw. So that consultation process then determined that we would be in line with, by revoking the bylaw, we would fall into line with all the other councils throughout Hawke's Bay. In my report, I've outlined a number of different scenarios that we would normally take action against with respect to outdoor burning, and also now what actions we can take under the Health Act through the nuisance provisions. FENZ have also recently updated the FENZ Act, which also takes care of permitting fires and addressing outdoor fires, for example, along the beach, which has been a recent issue. We've been consulting with other groups around the fires recently, and along with the Save the Dotterels and a couple of other local authorities, we found that the powers that were given to council under the bylaw were now sort of redundant as a result of the changes to the FENZ Act. So obviously we've now proposed to revoke the fire control bylaw, and we will then take any necessary action that we need to under the Health Act when needed. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Excellent, thank you, Luke. I'll open up for questions from councillors. Councillor Gregg.
Oh, yes, through the chair, thank you. My question is about consistency and how we communicate council's stance to the public, because the public are quite often confused about what our rules are. I'm just wondering what our approach is about, for example, nuisance fires on the beach that produce rubbish and pollution and they endanger wildlife, like how are we in the future going to communicate that clearly and consistently to the public, because I think that is the issue that we're having at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. That is something that we've been engaging with the different community groups, along with Hawke's Bay Regional Council, FENZ, and then the other councils, district councils within the region. We have organised for signage to be posted along the beach. FENZ are dropping that off to Customer Service Centre this morning, which outlines that all fires along the beach are prohibited, given we are in a total fire ban time or period at the moment. We've also discussed working with FENZ and ensuring that we'll have to update our website, obviously, and outline messaging that is consistent with the other councils and also with the Act and relevant legislation. And we'll also need to update some administrative updates to our Parks and Reserves bylaw as well. So all the messaging should be consistent. Napier City Council is the only council doing it differently to Hastings, Central Hawke's Bay and Wairau. They're all doing it the same, so we need to update our messaging on our website.
Sorry, further to that, thank you, Luke. So consistency, does that mean the signs will be year-round, or are they going to put them there just for a while and then take them down?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. The signs that are going up, hopefully today, or if not in the near future, they're about the current prohibited fire season that we're currently in, that FENZ have determined. They control those periods, so they will be put up for the foreseeable future until such time as that fire ban is removed. And then we have discussed with FENZ and Central Hawke's Bay, with Regional Council, what permanent signage can go up, just, advising people and trying to provide that education around lighting of fires, ensuring that, people aren't put at risk, property or roadways.
So just to clarify, Luke, if we're not in a prohibited fire season, do we not actually have any ability to completely ban fires in our parks, reserves and foreshores, just as a complete ban?
That is within the Parks and Reserves bylaw. It generally indicates within that document that all fires along our parks and reserves are prohibited.
Okay.
They can apply for a permit, or someone can apply for a permit. Generally, that has to be done now under the FENZ Act through FENZ.
Mm-hmm.
FENZ will issue a permit without consulting with council, but they encourage the applicant to engage with us to ensure that we're okay with it. So they won't permit a fire to be undertaken on council land. They'll permit something to be done on private property, and then anything on council land would actually require our consent.
So, so park, reserve or foreshore FENZ would require our consent, and
correct.
they would come to us to obtain that?
Yeah, they would need to get their own permit through council as well.
Okay.
But that's not something that's done through the fire control bylaw.
No. Okay. And do we have the ability to just withhold that consent, or does there have to be an underlying rationale as to why we've denied that?
If it's on our land,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we can withhold consent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Councillor Crystal.
Just through the mayor, where does our reserve, our land end and the foreshore? What's the because we don't own the foreshore, do we?
No.
No.
So through you, Madam Mayor, the high water mark is
Yeah.
where our reserve ends,
Yeah.
and then beyond that is not in our control.
Councillor Bogue and then Councillor Good.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. We had an event along our foreshore for Matariki last year and the year before. Where does that fit into getting permission, and what is our role in allowing or not allowing events like that to happen? Because it was in that particular time frame mentioned, I think, in the paper between is it May and August, when the Hawke's Bay Regional Council says that fires are not to be allowed. So where does it leave that particular event?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's something that we're working on through these consultations that we've been undertaking. That's not specifically related to the fire control bylaw as such. That event is something that we've identified as being quite significant. And so we're working with Regional Council, the organisers of the event, some community groups and FENS to determine a more suitable location that's away from the Napier airshed. Within that period that you mentioned, May through to August or September, any smoke that enters into Napier airshed, Regional Council have the ability to take enforcement action. So where Council have given consent for someone to hold an event like Matariki, if the wind had have directed smoke into the airshed, Napier City Council may have been held liable for they may be responsible as far as enforcement action being taken against us by Regional Council. So we are working with Regional Council and the event organisers and a number of other groups to ensure that the location is sufficiently away from the airshed and still able to provide the significance of the event to the people organising it.
Councillor Gregg.
Oh, yes, through the chair. Sorry, that was just to clarify. I was on the phone yesterday to HBRC just to clarify which part of the beach is Napier City Council controlled. It's the dry part, okay? So anything down to the water is us, and anything where the water touches is the sea part is HBRC.
Any further questions? Okay, so the recommendation is to approve the revocation of the NCC Fire Control Bylaw. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan, seconded by Councillor...
No. Can I speak against?
No, it hasn't been moved or seconded.
Can I have a seconder?
I was going to suggest a couple of additions to the motion. Sorry, but...
So you would like to put forward an amended...
That's the words, yes.
Okay, what were you looking to do?
Just in line with the conversation around allaying some of the concerns that were raised in conversation just then. So B, reaffirm Council's stance that fires are prohibited on Council reserve, including our beaches, unless permission is granted by Council in accordance with our Parks and Reserves bylaw. And C, direct staff to communicate this restriction to our public, including visitors, and to actively manage events when permission is granted for fires.
As the mover, are you happy to accept those amendments?
I'm really happy, I think, with the first half of that. Are you able to read that out again, Councillor Brown?
Yeah, sure, I can email it through too. But reaffirm Council's stance that fires are prohibited on Council reserve, including our beaches, unless permission is granted by Council in accordance with our Parks and Reserves bylaw.
Quite happy with that. Through you, Mayor Wise, what was the second half?
The second one was basically around making sure that it's communicated to the public clearly and that any events such as Matariki are actively managed.
That's the part, probably fine with the communication bit. It's the actively managing events part that I think under the current legislation may not be
it's not our responsibility.
Our role or responsibility. So I'd be uncertain at this stage about putting that as a directive on staff.
Yeah, happy to just reduce it to direct staff to communicate this restriction to our public, including visitors. It's basically signage on a beach. Yeah.
You happy?
I'll just email it to you.
And you're seconding, Councillor Brown?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Would you like to speak to the motion, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor Wise. Just very briefly, I think overall at a strategic level, I think it is very wise to have the role and responsibility of FENS heightened, clarified, clear in regards to fire control. I know that if we were to have issues under our fire control bylaw, they were often the party we would involve anyway in terms of managing that risk. And I think it seems very prudent that we follow what a lot of other local authorities are doing. And by removing this bylaw, it actually makes it clear where the role and responsibility lies as well. If we kept it, it would be Muddy Waters who was responsible for what still, even though we have now this piece of legislation that makes it clear. So, yeah, very supportive and happy with the amendments that Councillor Brown has proposed, just to make our internal understanding of the operations of this more clear from our perspective. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Firstly, a bit of a shout out to our staff. We've recently had a nuisance fire in our ward and the staff responded really quickly and it was addressed in a really timely manner. So it shows to me that this memorandum of understanding is working. It feels like a really pragmatic approach to a complicated situation, and the amendments are around allaying any concerns that this might be seen to be a weakening of our stance on this. I think we've had numerous emails recently from Forest and Bird and the Ahuriri Estuary Protection Society around the environmental effects. There's nuisance with waste and other things that come along with fires on the beach. So this is about reaffirming our stance and making it clear where we stand.
Any further speakers? Councillor Grigg.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, I'd like to speak against the motion. So my concern is that FENS, they don't consider pollution, air pollution, they don't consider rubbish on the beach, they don't consider harm to wildlife. We are responsible for that section of the beach. Our bylaw clearly states that all fires are prohibited in parks and reserves at all times. I think that by revoking the bylaw, we would take away some of our control. So I'm speaking against. Thank you.
Councillor Bogue.
Yes, I'm also speaking against this. I think that the removal of the bylaw is going to happen and needs to happen, but I think it's premature at the moment when we will be depending on a memorandum of understanding which doesn't cover a lot of the important issues that have been raised. So I think we should be first of all discussing with the other parties before we remove this bylaw, because it's going to leave a lot of areas without protection. The MOU as it is only covers what's called illegal and nuisance burning complaint responses, and it refers to the Napier City Council burning bylaw, which revoking this bylaw will remove. So much of the reference to illegal complaint responses means breaking our bylaw, which won't be in existence anymore. The the Memorandum of Understanding says that TLAs have the discretion to allow burning on beaches. That obviously is not what we want or isn't appropriate for what we're considering at the moment, and removing our bylaw at this stage removes this restriction. So I actually think that we're putting the cart before the horse, and there is nothing in the Memorandum of Understanding about protecting wildlife on beaches and parks. There's no prohibition of burning driftwood. All those things need to be in there before I'm confident that removing this bylaw is the right thing to do. I would like to see that discussion with the other parties, the TLAs, and FENS, to make sure that those things are in place, that we have a look then at our Memorandum of Understanding before we remove this bylaw, because I think we're going to be left high and dry. Thank you.
Any further speakers?
Can I just ask a question as a result of that? Well, when did the other councils accept this amendment? Do we know?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can't be certain. It could potentially have been when the changes to the FENS Act were put into place from 2018, 2019.
Okay, and just a follow-up, is there, how often is it reviewed, the FENS Act? Do you know that?
I don't know.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I'm actually going to speak in support of the resolution. I understand, based on some questions that I had asked Luke, that the Memorandum of Understanding is due to be reviewed very soon. So we will be able to incorporate some of those changes that Councillor Bogue has listed. I believe that the current fire control bylaw just creates a lot of confusion within our community, and it is time to follow our other local councils and make it very clear that FENZ are the lead agency in terms of this space. We have mechanisms within our Parks and Reserves bylaw that we can utilise to ensure that we have control in this space, and I think it's actually well overdue revoking this bylaw. Did you want your right of reply, Deputy Mayor Brosnan, as the leader?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Wise. I think all of the points raised, in particular from Councillor Bogue's kōrero, was very pertinent to the discussion and the development of our revised MOU. I do feel confident that as we're currently reviewing our citywide reserve management policy, that we are able to capture all of the concerns that were raised in that with regards to prohibiting burning on our parks and reserves and foreshores. So I do feel confident that that will still be actioned, and I like the clarity and the certainty and the consistency that we get with putting the responsibility fairly in FENZ courts where it legally lies. Thank you.
Thank you. There being no further speakers, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Councillor Bogue, Councillor Gregg. Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you.
Okay, moving to agenda item 2, the annual plan 2025-26, adoption of underlying information. And we have Danica to present for us. Welcome. And Caroline.
Hello. So yeah, the purpose is to adopt the underlying information for the annual plan 25-26. This information will help inform the development of the annual plan consultation document. Just noting that further information that will also help inform development will come to Council in February for consideration. So the key points of the paper include the direction given to date results in a proposed average rates increase of 7.9%, and that is 3.8% less than the increase proposed through the 3-year plan for 25-26. The proposed capital plan amounts to $159.6 million, and with the probability assumption applied, it comes to $127.7 million. And the proposed rates increase changes to fees and charges, the reimagined facilities and commercial facilities, and the CCTO are topics that are expected to be included in the consultation document. Work planned for the remainder of this year and early next year may result in additions to this list. And the detailed information for each topic, such as options and Council's preferred option, will also come to the February meeting for consideration. So I'll take the rest of the paper as read and happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Opening up for any questions. We've obviously traversed this through our workshops, so I think everyone has a very clear understanding. Councillor Price.
Just the probability assumption, was that always just under 32 million?
I can answer that.
I thought it was lower than that.
So the probability assumption is based on 20% of the total capital plan.
Okay.
So it's a percentage.
Councillor Brown.
Just a minor question, through you, Madam Chair. The Resilience Fund that we're suggesting we remove, what was that money going to go towards?
I might need to refer to...
My recollection was it was actually going to become essentially a reserve that we built up. It hadn't been earmarked for any specific activities. Is that correct?
Yes, that's partly true, Mayor-wise. We're also going to put the cost of our staff that's working in that space, in the emergency management space. It's also, we've got one staff member that's also covered through that fund.
That's continuing though, isn't it? We're continuing to...
Correct.
So just to clarify, was it money put aside for response in the event of an emergency? Yep.
any further questions? Okay. I'm going to move from the chair, and I would just like to propose an addition to the resolution that we establish a working group including elected members to prepare the detailed engagement plan. Do I have a seconder for? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Brosnan. So this obviously is just another step in the process of the preparation of our 2025-26 annual plan. I do want to acknowledge all the work that's been undertaken by staff to get us to this point. And I also want to acknowledge that we have set some quite challenging targets in terms of efficiencies, and we will all be working together to achieve those. Fundamentally, I think it's really important that we strike that right balance in our annual plan between meeting the needs of our community in terms of investment in our infrastructure and having the appropriate levels of service and appropriate resourcing across the city, to also ensuring that we remain as affordable as possible. And I know that that's what we're working really hard to achieve in this annual plan. So I'm really, really comfortable with these underlying assumptions and looking forward to working alongside our staff to prepare the final document, and also prepare a really, really robust engagement plan and consultation document so that our community can come on this journey with us. So thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much for your wise. I think you've summed it up very well. I know that there has been a significant amount of work done by our staff and our elected members to work particularly on the rates impact. And so I commend I think it was 3.8% reduction we've been able to find so far, and endorse all of the comments you've made. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further speakers? Councillor Brown.
Yeah, kia ora. So overall, I think where we've landed is a pragmatic place for our annual plan document. Got a few sort of balancing factors in that. I suppose, firstly, I'm not in love with the idea of reducing that resilience fund. I think the reality of our situation is it's not if, but when we have another emergency event, and I thought it felt quite prudent to include a money put aside for that rainy day so that we had funds available for response. But as it's going up for community consultation, looking forward to seeing what the public thought on that. The assumptions in the capital plan, don't love where we're at, but our staff have very carefully taken us through those, and I can understand how we've arrived at our figures. Obviously, we have lingering concerns around where our systems and processes are, around how staff and us are able to prioritise those projects. But I know that we're also working on that very effectively and building how we can deliver our projects and prioritise them effectively into the future. I think the probability assumption that we've included, it's pragmatic. It feels a bit like a blunt instrument, but to deal with where we're at as an organisation. But I do expect that that's more of a crutch to get us through rather than something that we come to rely on into the future. And I think that the staff are doing a really great job at improving our systems in that space. I'm really proud of the work that we're doing in this annual plan around our commercial facilities, the reimagining project and the CCTO, all setting us up for long-term sustainability of rates. And I look forward to hearing what the community have to say on what we've put forward. So overall, very in support.
Thank you. So we've had 3 speakers in support of the motion. Do we have any wishing to speak against? Just a reminder that in addition to what you have in front of you, we now have a point G, that we're establishing a working group, including elected members, to prepare the detailed engagement plan. So all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much, ladies. Next up, we have our paper on Ahuriri investment management, and we have Richard here to talk us through this paper. Thank you. And Jess. And Carol.
Through the Mayor, thank you. Yes, it's important, I think, that you do have a few people in front of you today with this quite a big piece of work, really, I think, for council. And I think there's been a lot of work going into this from councillors as well as staff. And yeah, that's why you've got a wide cast. We are also would like to be able to answer fully any questions that you have going forward, noting that we have had a workshop on that in the public excluded yesterday or 2 days ago, and it's, you know, we are in the public arena, and we've always said with this process that we would put everything we could in front of the public, so we would take them along the journey with us as the CCTO comes forward. So through its LTP, Council has had resolved to stand up a council-controlled organisation to manage the commercial portfolio, and it's proposed that the commercial assets in that portfolio are not given to that trading organisation, but in the first instance stay on council's books, and that the board has the right skills and a mandate from council to manage the assets for commercial return, to grow the asset base and provide council with the financial returns now, but importantly for future generations of Napier ratepayers as well. So this report is the third as we are implementing council's direction to stand up the CCTO. It's consistent with the previous reports, and I think this is an important point. There's nothing particularly new here. It's a different level of detail, and there are some things that have emerged around the statement of expectations that council has for the proposed council trading organisation that kind of reflect the previous discussions that we've had through council papers and open workshops. And importantly, it's also consistent in terms of the suite of assets that council has previously discussed in the public that it's expecting the CCTO to manage on its behalf. The statement of expectation, which lays out how council intends the AIM board to manage the assets, is part of the paper. I don't intend to go through that document. However, we are very happy to take questions on it from you all. The transitioning council commercial investment portfolio from internal management does require a structured approach, and this paper is really identifies those processes and sets up some recommendations for that to happen in a timely way, really prior to the next financial year, where that needs, if we've got everything in place, it would be set up for the next budget. Those things are approving the statement of expectation to the AIM Board of Directions, approving the specific assets. You'll recall that we have already approved in principle, but now we're getting down to the specifics assets, and endorsing the roles and responsibilities at a high level, and that would include how council holds its safeguards against things it does not want the board to be involved in or would like the board to be able to pursue in a particular way. So those things are identified through these next steps. And while we are not, we're unable at this stage to be able to adopt a final statement of expectation because we don't have the commercial entity fully formed, it will allow some important mechanical steps to happen while that happens, when particularly the recruitment and appointment of the board itself in the months to come. Would you like to add anything?
No, I think that's a good overview.
Yeah. So yes, we're happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Richard. Opening up for any questions. Councillor Gregg.
Yes, through you, Mayor Wise, and thank you, Richard and Carolyn and Jess, for your report. A question about the board recruitment policy on page 36. Who is responsible for that recruitment?
So we've got an appointment policy. We will apply the policy.
Just speak in the mic, please. Sorry.
So we will just follow the appointments policy process.
My question was more who's actually going to be doing the recruiting?
So we'll have a procurement process that will apply, and just that process will be followed by us effectively.
And there is some guidance in that policy around how those steps emerge in terms of getting the chairperson elected or brought on board first so they can form part of the panel going forward, things like that. So that's detailed in which was adopted in the previous paper in the appointments and remunerations policy.
Councillor Brown.
Just a small question of clarification, and you may have covered this in the workshop. Apologies, I missed the start of it. In number C, 11 Hospital Terrace, just looking for confirmation that the land required for the Mataruaho project has been apportioned off that already.
It's in the final stages of subdivision.
Radio.
Deputy Mayor Brosnan and then Councillor McGrath.
Thank you, team, for your work on this. One question from me. Would it be fair to say that additional clarity could be made in the leasehold freeholding land situation with our current policy framework in council, and that's something we could look to address further on?
Yes. So the leasehold land portfolio does have some of those matters that council would specifically want to have the board address, and that could include selling particular pieces of land or retaining some lands. So the management may not allow to selling some parts of the leasehold land, yet to be decided exactly what that may be. In the paper, there is proposed there a management agreement between council and the board will be the next level where those matters can be detailed, and so there can be further clarification of what the expectations of the board is in regard to particular bits of leasehold land.
Great. Thank you very much for that answer. Just through you, Madam Chair, just foreshadowing, I do have a proposed addition that I'd like to add around that point. Thank you.
Councillor McGrath.
Yeah, just through the chair. Mine was along the leasehold land as well. We did have a good discussion about it, and council over the last 10 years, and Mr Price could probably go back a lot further than that, with the leasehold land. And I'm just really looking for some assurances that for my own I don't know, safety, I guess, not a great word, that we will be protecting our waterfront properties, and that they're not suddenly put into a CCO and goes, oh dear, I didn't realise you wanted to keep those ones, or they're in here now, the whole council signed them off, too bad. I just need to know that there are some safeguards and some roadblocks to make sure with that one specifically that the council and the table here get to make that decision. So,
Yeah, so I think we have outlined in the paper that that management services agreement is something that we still need to work through, and that we're suggesting that that work will happen in Q1 of next calendar year. That we'll come back to you with all of that detail is yet to come back to this table. In a workshop, we'll come back and we'll fully work through that with you. So the roles and responsibilities, and there's still a whole lot of definition that needs to go into that agreement. So we are suggesting that the whole of the leasehold land portfolio is managed by the CCTO. We don't think it makes sense for any of council staff to manage any of part of the leasehold land portfolio, for any of it to be excluded and held on council's sort of balance sheet, or all of it is going to be held on council's balance sheet, but any of it to be excluded, to sort of carve it up. So we're suggesting that the whole of the asset goes in, and then that we define how it is managed, and that detail is yet to be worked through.
And in that second stage of how it's to be managed, it can include a clear instruction to the board that they are unable to sell a particular piece of leasehold land. But we have to go through that process of working out what it is that you want in that regard.
We can itemise that by property, address or title.
Councillor Taylor.
Through you, Your Worship. Just in relation to Part C, Tranche 1, and parcel of land 398 Pemberton Drive. This piece of land was previously offered for sale, or part of it was offered for sale to Kaingaora, and part was set aside for future aquatic development. Could you give me an indication of the parcel of land that was offered for sale to Kaingaora, the value of that?
It's approximately 5 million, I think. I'll just have to have a quick look, sorry. So that was valued recently at 5,850,000.
Okay. So you wish Bobby foreshadowing an amendment to that the parcel of land previously designated for aquatic development remain out of the asset and available for sale?
Councillor Crystal.
Through the Mayor, just coming back to the leasehold land and the, putting in some controls, you just talked about selling, it, but I think it should go further than selling it, and as to oversight of anything that would go on that land as well, that if it's a strategic asset, and that when we develop that sort of process of what happens to it, it's not just selling, it's actually what also happens on that land?
I think the important thing to remember is that you've got a current structure there that enables you a legal structure through the leases of what you are able and not able to do. It's not like we're developing something new. So what it is, what you're really doing is, what do you actually want to hand over to the CCTO to do on your behalf that you're currently doing anyway?
Councillor Crown.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I'm just looking for some some assurance around the fact that we have the right tools available to us to, in the future, shift assets out if future councils recognise them as they're needed for strategic purpose. So I guess I'm trying to understand the interaction between management agreement, SIPO, statement of expectation, and how we can future-proof that if we're to go ahead.
Sorry, just want to confirm your question. Are you talking about bringing assets back? So
taking it out of the management of the CCTO and back to council if a future council decided that it was needed for current purpose.
So you've got an opportunity to revise your statement of expectations and remove assets from under management or take them out of the investment portfolio as you wish on an annual basis. I think I would say you would want to be careful about which assets you might want to remove, because once you've given them to the CCTO and you put them into the investment portfolio, you have effectively handed them over and given them the opportunity to divest them. So once they've gone effectively. So I suppose, yeah, I think that you would want to think carefully about doing that, because if you consider them strategic or potentially strategic, you only have one opportunity, I suppose, to protect them in the first instance. So
The only thing, if you have the management agreement and it specifies in there that they're not able to be divested, then they will obviously not be. They will still be there. Yeah.
So would err on the side of caution in the first instance if you were unsure. So we will have that opportunity to do that and review particularly the leasehold land portfolio and I suppose all of the settings around the management services agreement in the first quarter of next year before we lock those down.
And the reverse is also true, like there can be a tranche 2 of assets potentially that the council wishes to have commercial focus put on them.
Councillor Brown. Just through you, Madam Mayor, just to really make sure I've got that point clear in my head. So they can be, assets can be in the CCTO and rules around that they can't be divested, but it would be very hard for us to take it back and use it for community purposes. That forever be in a commercial space.
You could take them back if they hadn't been divested. We're just saying if you haven't put any settings or control around which if you've handed them over and you've given the CCTO full ability to trade and divest those assets and you've handed them over and said they are for purely commercial return, then the CCTO at that point in time has the ability to trade and divest those assets. So
The obvious one is Parklands, for example, where that the whole purpose of Parklands is to create sections to divest. So it'd be a big call to say bring them back once they're sold, basically.
We're basically saying to the CCTO, your main priority is to generate a cash return, and that's what they will go and do.
And if I can add one thing to that, is important to have in the back of our minds as we go forward, is that the more flexibility the commercial board has to focus, to have a range of levers to pull to get commercial performance, the better the return will be to council. The more restrictions they have on what they are able to do, the less kind of best use, best return you'll be able to get. Yeah.
Councillor Price.
Just 2 points. I look forward to Deputy Mayor Brosnan's amendment, because I think it will, I'm picturing it will protect some of the strategic leasehold land, which as Councillor McGrath referred to as going back, we've always seen it as sacred land that we would keep. I understand some of it's not, but would that be a fair comment, Deputy Mayor Brosnan?
It would.
It would. So the second thing is obviously for me, the Prebinson Drive, the area proposed for maybe a swimming pool, aquatic centre, whatever you want to call it. My concern is just an alternative if we, to Onikawa, if we don't go with Onikawa, to a site to put an aquatic centre. We're going to be, I guess, throwing out a site that was made as a suitable place to do this. I guess I look back and I think, well, if we can get $10 million or whatever that would go into this investment arm, that's probably a good thing because they might find the money that actually builds an aquatic centre down the track. I just worry about an alternative site. I get from discussion that probably might upset some, but a reserve would be a good place to put it on because there's no loss of money, whereas I do see that this site does take away $10 or whatever million that could be used for something else. Is that making sense to you? So how, before we chuck it out, can we be assured that there is an alternative site? I think there is. I really think there is. When we came up with that site, there was a lot of political interference, and you wonder whether that site was chosen as a preference to others just because the way it was then. I guess that's all I'd say. So I don't know how we put some protection.
I'm going to open up for some general discussion in a minute around the two foreshadowed amendments before we have a mover and seconder, but I'll just see if there's any other questions before we move into that next discussion. Thank you. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. There's a table that sets out timeframes of the establishment of the investment company. So my question, and I think
Councillor
it relates...
Simpson, we can't quite hear you.
Sorry. It's my softly spoken nature. My question relates to the table of establishment of the new investment company and the steps that we go through. And I think it might, if you can clarify for me, and it might ease some of the concerns around the table. So we currently have a list of 5 asset classifications that are included in the agenda item. One includes a property that's been mentioned several times this morning. So my question is, at what point in that timetable of establishment do we as the council go through those classifications and put the caveat that we may seek to put on any of those assets?
So in Q1 of next year, we will be drafting or putting together the management services agreement between, that will be from you, the council, to AIM. And it's a statement of expectation is kind of like a higher document than that. That is where you are specifically putting in some guardrails and expectations around particular assets. And it is envisaged at that point where we do go through piece by piece to make sure that the right level of divestment, or whatever you want to call it, to the board has been detailed in that agreement, so they know where they stand with every particular piece, and also you as elected members have confidence that your wishes are going to be met.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, kia ora, through you, Madam Chair. Kind of further to Councillor Price's conversation, it sounds like, based off of some of your previous answers, that we shouldn't move that land that is designated for the pool into the CCO until we know that we have another good viable option if we should need an alternative site for the pool. What would that process and the timeline look like around, slightly outside the scope of this paper, but finding or getting us assurance that there is another good viable option as an alternative pool site?
I think that's a very difficult question for us to answer. Not only, it's a different process entirely. It's one that Russell and his team would need to be, looking from, because that is from obviously an aquatic centre perspective. It's not a role for the CCTO. The CCTO is asking the other question, which is, is that available for the CCTO to make commercial return on? That's the question, and I'm sorry, but you have to. That's a question for you. It's not a question for us. And you'll recall that having the right due diligence done on a suitable site is quite an exhaustive process. It's detailed. you need quite a lot of reports to make sure that the feasibility of that is not just, you know, yeah. So I think we as a team would be loath to put any recommendations around that. I'm sorry if I'm speaking for you, Russell, but I think that at the moment the question is really a different question. Yeah.
Are there any questions outside of the foreshadowed amendments? Okay, there being none, we'll first address Deputy Mayor Brosnan's foreshadowed amendment, if you could share that, please.
Thank you, Mayor Wise. Mine was in regards to the leasehold land, and it was a new addition of E to the resolution that would read, note the current policy for the sale of non-strategic leasehold land, which is document ID 603440, and ensure that any strategic leasehold properties that council wishes to retain are included in detail in the management service agreement to be developed by 1 July 2025.
We might just pop that up on the screen, and I do just want to open for general discussion on these before we have movers and seconders, because I think that we can probably have some guidance around the inclusion or exclusion prior to voting. So, just that one. So you'll see note E there in red, which essentially gives us assurance that through the process of the development of the management service agreement, we will be able to identify any of those leasehold land properties that we own that we consider strategic are unable to be sold. Any questions or comments with regards to that?
Sounds pragmatic.
Fully support.
So we will retain that in there for the moment, and we'll move to Councillor Taylor's amendment, which I will just get Carolyn to pop up now. May need a little bit of tweaking.
Well, I was quite happy if you just went to C and where the 398 Prebenson Drive is mentioned, lot, because it is one lot, just adding the words excluding the land previously designated for aquatic development.
Okay, so I'll open that aquatic development. I'll open that up for any questions or discussion.
Would you like me to give my reason?
Yes, absolutely.
It may be a little prolonged, but I will be as fast as I can. So, in August, Council resolved that Ahuriri Investment Management would have 5 groups of assets, and this included select surplus land belonging to Napier City Council property, and that included 398 Prebenson Drive land previously offered to Kāinga Ora for development and possible future aquatic facility development. All the research, which I actually have with me, including the Napier Aquatic Strategy of 2014, the Napier Aquatic Centre Business Case of 2017, the Issues and Options paper of 2016, indicated that Napier needs to consider future aquatic provision. Sure, yeah, there's been some major changes in what that provision may be over the last 7 years of procrastination, but fact remains that 14 sites were investigated as to where a future aquatic centre could go. That was weeded down to 6, which included 4 sites on the current Onikawa site and 2 others. The council has committed up to $8 million as a band-aid to keep Onikawa functioning for hopefully the next 10 to 12 years, as it's not in our current long-term plan. We have spent $2 million on the Prebenson Road or Prebenson Drive facility, preloading it to get the ground ready for future development. City Council has invested money, along with Hastings District Council, in the development of a future aquatic strategy for the region. And in year 2 of our current long-term plan, we've budgeted to start preparatory work for the design of a future aquatic facility for Napier. So I just cannot understand why we would divest and dispose of the one piece of land that we currently have identified as suitable for future aquatic facility until such time as we have an alternative. So it's a simple hang on to it. We can sell off the other part that we were already going to sell, as Richard has said, for nearly $6 million. And then in tranche 2 or at a later time, we can divest this other parcel of land if it's not going to be used for an aquatic facility. So I support selling 398 Cremison Drive, that lot, just without disposing of the piece of land that has been identified as suitable for an aquatic facility.
Thank you,
That's my reasoning.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Open up for any further questions or discussion regarding this suggested amendment. Councillor Price.
I guess Councillor Taylor just touched on what I'd talked about before when I was asking a question. All I sort of ask is in this, we can just hold on to that bit of the land, as Graham says, until we've got an alternative. And whether we can put something into the motion, I don't know. But if we get an alternative, it just goes in with the other lot. We were quite happy to cut it off when we were looking at putting Kaiangora into there and just leaving it as what it is. But I see that, you know, in 2 years' time, we've got money budgeted and we need to make a decision on where we're going with the pool anyway. But why get rid of where it could possibly go for the sake of a couple of years? Because I don't think it's going to be put into housing before then anyway.
And there will certainly be opportunities to transfer it to the CCTO at another time in the future.
That's it. Thank you.
Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm certainly in support of that motion. I think it is important that we have clear alternatives if that is our option at the end of the day to divest that piece of land. But we can't forsake our future decisions around, otherwise we hamstring a future council into making decisions that we've forced them into today.
So if there's no questions, then I will ask for a mover and a seconder as the current, and it would make sense for that to be Deputy Mayor Brosnan and Councillor Taylor as the people that put forward the amendments, and then I'll open it up for debate and voting.
Mayor Wise, can I just make one question, because I am yet to be persuaded on the pool section, and I have heard the discussion, but I would like to hear the debate, and I understand if I'm the mover, which includes that I'm not able to vote against it. Is it possible to take that part of Councillor Taylor's amendment as a second vote? So moving.
Or I could just ask for another mover.
I'm also happy with that because my one appeared to be unanimously supported. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Councillor Taylor, are you happy to move as current
I'm happy to
stands?
move my amendment and the Deputy Mayor's.
Fabulous. And do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Councillor Taylor, do you wish to add anything further to your...
No, I've already said that I support the amendment put by the Deputy Mayor, and I have spoken at length of my amendment, so I have nothing further to add.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam. Through you, Madam.
Reply.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I think this is an important step as we progress the establishment of the investment company. I think as has been seen through this debate, there is some careful consideration around what we do as a council, invest with or divest to the investment company to manage on our behalf and on behalf of future generations of Napier. And I think it is important that we provide as much opportunity as we can for the investment company to operate in independence of council to make things happen, to ensure that our investments grow over time and that our council receive dividend in return for that favour. But I do think it's important we go through the next few stages where we critically assess that we are 100% sure about what we do and don't divest. And as we've been informed by management, we get another opportunity in the first quarter of next year to reconcile that list with some concerns that we may have. But the most important resolution today is for us to keep this momentum going, to give the potential directors of that company confidence that we are going to divest and give them carte blanche responsibility to provide good return on investment without interference. So I clearly second the motion to go through.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor McGrath and Councillor Crown.
I'm going to speak against the motion today. I'm not a great fan of a CCTO and voted against it earlier on, but not necessarily for those reasons today. It's more against the part with retaining Prebinson Drive. All the reports under the sun are great. When I did my investigation on the site, Swim New Zealand and Sport New Zealand said, do not put a pool site next to a busy highway and do not put it next to waterways. It's my understanding that we're going to, that there's an expressway there and we're going to make it an even bigger expressway shortly. And who knows what our future water direction will be down there as we lead into the regional park. And a group of councillors went down to the Onikawa site yesterday and looked like a pretty good site to me. No water was running out of one end of any of the pools that have been there for a very long period of time. And if I have to say, this council was against the Onikawa site from a very early time. And I think the last pool was built there and opened in 2000, and this council was ready to pull it out at end of life around about 2013 or 15. So, yeah, I think the whole thing's tainted, and I'm not meaning just the Onikawa site, perhaps the other site as well. So I don't support the motion.
Councillor Crown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I support the amended motion in front of us. I think that in order for us to be able to move forward, it is quite clear that consensus will be our strength. And I think that the process that's been outlined in the paper, the timeline around the other tools that are yet to be developed, I think that that will provide us with another opportunity to find or deliver consensus on what we actually transfer to the management of the CCTO. Just to take it up a notch, because I think it is beyond potential pool sites. I think the key reason that we are doing this is to make sure that we reduce the burden on future ratepayers. That is the reason why we're looking to set this up. It does mean that the board do need the assurance that they can operate with some flexibility and independence from council, but I think we need to remind ourselves and keep our eyes firmly on that purpose for the CCTO. It's making sure that we are making ratepayers of the future, causing them as least stress as possible. So happy to support at this stage.
Councillor Gregg.
Oh yes, through Madam Mayor. I also would like to speak against the amendment. I think if the CCTO can possibly make a commercial return from that land at Prebinson Drive, we should give them the freedom to do that. If we're looking at 10 to 12 years before we get a new pool, why hold back? We can reduce our rates using that commercial return. Thank you.
Any further speakers? Deputy Mayor Bronson.
Thank you very much. It's been really interesting listening to all the discussion. I was initially comfortable reading the paper, transferring the full property over as for a few reasons. The city has not decided to fund a new aquatic centre at this stage. We don't have that in our budget. We have invested to keep Onikawa alive for that period of time of 10 to 12 years. And if we did eventually fund an aquatic centre, the city has not decided to move locations. And then if it did decide to move locations, there are sites that meet the criteria and new sites that also become available as our city moves and changes. So the timeframe for decision making on if and when a new aquatic centre and where a new aquatic centre was to be is unclear, I guess, at the moment. So Prevenson Drive land is saleable. The council has many non-saleable land parcels that, such as reserves, which could be suitable for an aquatic centre. So there's an opportunity cost in picking Prevenson Drive. Lastly, that community has asked us, our community has asked us to maximise our assets and our return on investments to reduce their rates in the short and the long term. So that's why I was initially comfortable. However, I think I have been persuaded by the debate. I think I personally accept that 398 Prevenson Drive currently is hands down the city's best alternative site for an aquatic centre from an accessibility, a cost, a site preparation perspective, etc. But I do accept that it is pragmatic that we have an alternative before we divest, and that divestment can occur through transfer at a later stage. And I'm also persuaded, I think, by the comments of staff, how difficult it would be to bring that back in, and how we want to give the board of the CCTO clear mandate when we do give them assets. So I'm persuaded and support the motion by Councillor Taylor.
Any further speakers? Councillor Brown.
Yeah, kia ora. Speaking in support of the motion, I think to Councillor McGrath's point, I don't think that the perfect sites exists, speaking specifically about the pool. There's valid concerns about both sites, but the reality is, as Deputy Mayor Brosnan just pointed out, that this is designated as our best alternative site. I think this very conversation places uncertainty. If it was to be vested with the CCTO, it places an uncertainty for the CCTO that this may want to be withdrawn from by future councils, and the whole point is to only vest land with them where we give them free cup, lunch, or within our guidelines, the ability to do what they can to make commercial gain for it to offset our rates. So fully in support of the motion, and just my bottom line is that we should not move land into the CCO until we know we have another good viable option for the pool.
Any further speakers? Right of reply.
Very short. There is no guarantee that that site will ever become the aquatic centre, but at the moment it is the preferred viable option, and until there is another option, we should retain it. And we're not preventing economic return, because if it does not become an aquatic centre, it can then be divested and an economic return can be made from that parcel of land.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. There being no further speakers, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Councillor McGrath and Councillor Gregg. Carried. Thank you, everybody. We are going to take a 5-minute break, and you're going to be...
I'm going to see my mother for her birthday.
Wish her a happy birthday from the Mayor and all the
98th
councillors.
birthday.
And it is only 5 minutes, folks. We've got a lot of an agenda still to get through.
Right on.
So, yes, see you back here at 11:43.
risk, improve liquidity, and potential returns. As part of the work, the CCTO is being tasked with managing Napier City Council's investment portfolio. So this SIPO has been created in anticipation of CCTO introducing managed funds into the investment mix. So I have to stress it's in anticipation. So the SIPO is recognised within Council's overarching investment policy and creates the guardrails with which the CCTO and any related parties must operate. It establishes Council's high-level expectations for the managed fund portfolio. I need to stress also that this is a living document. It's expected that there'll be further changes, such as things just to get the initial wording absolutely correct. So I'll take the remainder of the report as read.
Thank you, Gary. Open up for questions. No questions? Could I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Gregg, seconded by Councillor Brown. Would you like to speak to that? Councillor Brown?
Yep, through you, Madam Chair, just briefly. I think this is a really pragmatic way of us looking at our investment portfolio. I fully support the intention of the SIPO, and I think it's great that we've included the ESG elements of managing the fund.
Any further speakers? Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very
Fantastic.
much,
Thank you.
Gary. Moving on to Ocean Spa pricing strategy, and Hayden, welcome. And Steve.
Morning, everybody. So our report today is seeking approval on some of our recommendations for some price points, those being lane-only membership, gym-only membership, and the third piece being a local rate or a resident rate that goes from Mahia to Parongaho as a card, so people have a slightly reduced discounted price in their pool entry. So just to note, we've been working pretty hard behind the scenes, and we can get these three ready to go by tomorrow. So seeking the approval today to do that, and then furthermore on that, we can do the online version by February 2025, just once we've got all the bugs and nitty-gritty stuff out the way, and just making sure all the forms and online stuff can be done properly and securely, and where all that information goes through to. So yeah, on that we're just seeking the approval and open for questions if there's any out there.
Great, thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Price.
Just one, thank you. Is there a provision if someone got sick and was out of action for 4 months for their subs to be...
So you're talking about on-hold membership?
Yeah, on hold.
Yes, there is. So generally there is some holds during your membership, depending on which one you sign up for. So that includes medical events or relocating. So we are also just looking at it, fine-tuning that a little bit more in terms of if it's a medical event, that's absolutely a valid reason to hold or cancel. So we've done recently, we've had someone who broke their leg, so we put it on hold for the 3 months until they could actually come back and get back into the gym.
So it'd be fair to say you just take that as a case by case?
Majority of the time, yes.
Yeah.
But there is also parts in the contracts that say what they can hold and reasons being why they can hold. Okay. So yes, but case by case is probably a better approach. There's so many variables, right? So,
yeah.
Through the Madam Chair, I think it's just taking a practical approach with that, Councillor Price, and it's just ongoing communication with that customer. So ad hoc and being practical.
Thank you.
Councillor Crown.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. I can certainly attest to the amount of work that has gone into this. And so I wanted to tease out a little bit around the recommended pricing and where you've fallen, especially hoping that you can give us a bit more detail around the comparisons that you did with other facilities nationally, and just remind us of the steps that you took in regards to that.
So in terms of the locals or residence rate, we looked at Mount Hotpools and Christchurch, both council entities, and looked at their website, their pricing, how they, who and how they offer it to their ratepayers and residents. So they, pretty much how we've priced it is a similar vein of discount, and we've just taken a similar approach to that. And kind of added a couple of our own things to it with the, refining it a little bit more. How we had originally the 30 passes was one that hadn't really worked out for us, but where 10 passes were popular. And then things like just ensuring our disability rates and senior citizen rates were all kind of on par as well, where it was quite evident on those other council websites or council facilities that's a real important rate to look after, a real important area.
And supplementary to that, so you can assure that the pricing that you've presented to us today is comparable to those other facilities nationwide?
Yeah, I believe so.
Councillor Crystal.
Just following on from that, the Mount Hotpools give a 50% discount to their locals, and we're doing 25, so that's kind of a bit different.
If I'm correct, I believe Mount Hotpools is a bit more expensive than us as well.
Yeah, they're $26.
For a single entry. Yep.
Yeah, compared to 20.
Yeah, so,
Through the chair, I think for us, without discounting, we've looked from a real regional perspective. So we've looked at other comparable facilities, including our own, e.g. Splash Planet, and we've tried to be consistent from a regional perspective.
Okay, and just a further question. So you're saying in here that the locals rate is effective from the 13th of December, but then the online ability to get it is not available till February. So how are people going to do the locals rate from 13th of December?
So right now people come in to sign up for the gym memberships. They'll follow the same suit.
Okay.
The only reason we've put February as the latest. We hope to bring it forward. Because there's no reason if we can't, why would we want to keep it for longer? So we will bring it forward if we can. But most of our memberships are done in present with the team on the front desk.
So you're talking about the gym membership for the 13th and not the swim?
Everything can be done tomorrow.
So if someone brought in, for example, a copy of their rates, yeah, then it would be processed manually at the desk as opposed to an online, yeah.
So how do we plan to communicate this to our community that this is going to happen?
We have an EDM drafted ready to go depending on the decision. So we've been working with comms to have that ready.
It would be really good to be in our Napier supplement that goes out to our ratepayers and things too, because, or with a rates bill or something, so people know.
It's ready to go.
Yeah.
Oh. So just to clarify, because I know we are due for our quarterly newsletter to go out soon, it's included in that, which goes to every household?
Julia said yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Julia. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Just a question. Can you just explain the rationale of going for a Hawke's Bay wide residence discount versus simply a Napier City residence?
Yeah.
I think we're playing the volumes game. We're trying to get as many people through the door and making it accessible for the whole region. With these discounts, we have done modelling with finance, and obviously with this discount has dropped that a little bit, but we're hoping through playing the volumes game, we'll make up the balance.
Thank you.
Would this also be in line with Splash Planet in Hastings, which is region-wide?
Correct.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Kia ora, through the Mayor. Just out of curiosity, how do we define or how do we decide what constitutes an adult versus a child? So the 15-year cutoff.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Oh, so how do we arrive at 15 plus as the definition of an adult versus a child?
It's generally the basic cost council, isn't it?
Again, we've gone consistent with what other facilities are charging as well. Other hot pools, other facilities around the region, including our own. So we've just taken a consistent approach.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, Mayor Wise. Controversially, perhaps I have an issue with the locals rate, so I'd just like to work it through with you. My issue is fundamentally underpinned by I'm not yet convinced that council is the right vehicle to be delivering the service long term, and I know we're working through that as an organisation. So if we introduced a local rate, can you explain to me how we're not then hamstringing potentially a future commercial component? And I'd like you to say it's a fixed term, it's a trial, it's a fixed term, we're communicating it's only for a year, or we're something like that.
I think with all our pricing, we fail fast, and we can demonstrate that with our off-peak rate at the moment.
What was that, sorry?
Sorry, I think what we've got to do with our pricing is we give things a go, and if we are going to fail, we fail fast. And, you know, I'll demonstrate the off-peak rate where we put that into motion 1 July. We sold very minimal, only one membership. So through this process, we're changing it from a 9 till 3 rather than a 10 till 3. So I think we will have our fingers on the pulse, Councillor Brosnan, and if it's not working, we will change it up or come back to you.
Yeah, thank you through you, Mayor Wise. I'm not sure if you're taking discussion.
Yes.
Yeah, I find the concept of rolling back a locals rate a significantly harder proposition than changing pricing structures, timing, card colours, all of that. So I am uncomfortable with introducing a locals rate without clear communication around it being a trial to make sure it is still profitable or long term will work for the facility in the context of that underpinning assumption that I'm not, and I don't think council is yet confident that City Council operating the facility into the future indefinitely is the best outcome for return on investment for ratepayers. So I have a level of discomfort.
Yeah. Can I just clarify what your principal issue is? And is it with regards to establishing a rate which may not be perceived as attractive to for if we were not to be operating the...
Correct, Your Worship. It is hamstringing any negotiations for a future commercial relationship for the running of the pool by us setting up some sort of non-commercially feasible rate that our community expects to go on forever.
And I guess my response to that would be that a commercial operator has the ability to charge whatever they wish. I don't feel they would be hamstrung in any way, and they do not have the same social and community obligations that we have to the community. So I don't believe it would interfere in any negotiations. I guess just to put my view on that.
Could I ask one question in response to that?
Yep.
Are we confident going into a negotiation we wouldn't put as a bottom line you retain the local rate?
I wouldn't.
Sorry?
I can only speak on behalf of myself. I don't think we would hamstring ourselves with a negotiation with those sorts of conditions when we have another aquatic facility. But I think for the moment, this is the right thing to do whilst we are operating this facility. I'll leave that with you to ponder on while we continue the debate. Councillor Bogue.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. I'm just going to share some questions that were sent to us by a user, just a few of them. And I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but there were some issues there that I thought it would be good for us all to hear the answer to. In terms of the local rate, we wondered if there had been calculations done on the estimated operational cost increase of introducing a local rate, the operational costs. Was that considered?
So so for signing up to the locals rate or residence rate, we have a $25 administration fee that covers the card and admin costs.
Okay.
That lasts for 2 years. And so on the second, third year, people reapply for it just to reapprove their still in Hawke's Bay.
Locality, yeah, they're localist. Okay, thank you. The lane swim only that's mentioned in the paper, does that mean only swimming in the 25-metre lap pool and not the other pools?
I did note a slight error there, so it is now swim only. We did have that in our first glance that it was swim only, lane swim only, but that becomes a little bit difficult with trying to police it, and it's not something we need to be out there policing because the team have got other things to do, and it's probably not the right feel for where we are. So it provides the pools to them.
Right, thank you. There's no option for a fitness class only option. Was that considered?
Not at this stage, but there are a conversation around it with Renee, our fitness team lead. There is interest. Like Steve said earlier, it's a little bit of an evolution at times. So Renee and I will meet before the break just to see where we're at with it. Because like I said, there's been some good interest in it. So.
Yes, well, we do look at all our fees and charges, don't we, annually? So, and finally, retirees. There's no retiree price for a swim only and gym only entry, and yet there is for the gym and pool.
And could I also suggest, Councillor Bogue, that because we do review our fees and charges annually, that perhaps that is something that could be considered to come through in our next annual plan, as opposed to us preventing us from moving forward with what's before us today.
I'm just trying to understand what's before us today. That's all. That's it.
Councillor Greig.
Yes, through you, Your Honour, a question about people using Ocean Spa. Do you anticipate that having a locals rate would increase the numbers of people coming to Ocean Spa?
Yes, so Steve mentioned earlier, so it's for it to be the Hawke's Bay region, we're looking for the volume game, so it'll be open to people from Wrangahau up to Mahia. So.
Any further questions? Do we need any further general discussion before I ask for a mover and seconder? Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you. With regards to my concern around council being the operator of the facility in a locals rate, would we be comfortable with, in addition to the motion, noting that the locals rate is provided while council is the operator of the facility?
Yeah.
Which gives them guidance going into any future commercial discussions.
Councillor McGrath.
Just through the chair, would that be different to any other part of the pricing structure though?
I don't believe so, no.
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 Yeah. Is anyone supportive of the suggested amendment? That being the case, could I, is there a question or are you wanting to move?
I'm happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Crown. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Crystal. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Crown?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to note the Deputy Mayor's concerns, and I think that certainly sits outside of this particular paper around the future of the facility and where it sits within council or externally. So I just want to acknowledge that. But I want to thank our staff for doing what we set you to do, which was to review the fees and charges, to investigate rates for Super Gold card holders, which we've done, residence discounts, off-peak time access and compartmentalised facility access, gym, pool only and combined. I think that you've landed in a really good place, and the process that you've taken has been thorough and practical along the way. So, yeah, very happy to support this. I know as a council, as governors, we often get frustrated at the amount of time that it takes to operationalise some of our direction. And I think that you have worked at pace on this, and so I want to acknowledge that also. So happy to support today.
Councillor Crystal.
Yes, just supporting what Councillor Crown said, and I know that I was a big push for a locals rate. I think it's just about every pool in the country that's council run has a locals rate, so it brings us consistent with the others, and I'm just really hoping that some of our locals will return back to the pools with a discount and spread the news far and wide.
Steve.
Through Madam Mayor, we obviously come to you all now on a quarterly basis to give you an update on how the commercial facilities are performing. So we will keep this conversation going, how these pricing packages are performing. So yeah, completely open and transparent, and yeah, thank you for your support because the team are doing an incredible job.
Councillor McGrath.
Just through you, Madam Mayor. Going to steal a bit of Councillor Mawson's thunder, probably. Look, I love what we've done with the disability rate also. I'm hoping that frees up a lot of opportunity for a group of people to come on down to the pool and enjoy themselves in there, like the rest of the community, without the price being the barrier, and allowing the caregiver in to do their thing. Wonderful. Well done.
Thank you. We've had 3 speak in support of the motion. Is there anyone wishing to speak against it? Deputy Mayor Crosby.
Thank you, just to keep things interesting. I support a locals rate, 100%, and I think if you set a locals rate now, it will be expected of the facility forever, regardless of who the operator is. And I acknowledge that is a community perception, my view of that, rather than a reality of a negotiation. So I would like clarity in the resolution to support the future operators' discussions and negotiations. I think if you set a future operator up now, or you either set a future operator up now to have to provide it essentially, or you hamstring negotiations without that clarity now. So I agree with Councillor McGrath's comment that this fee is structurally no different to any other fee on the facility. However, it will be the category of fee with the most community and public interest, and it will be expected of the facility once it is set up forever. So that's why I'm not supportive at this stage, because the resolution doesn't have the clarity that I would like to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? No, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Thank you very much, Steve and Hayden.
Cool. Thank you.
Rightio, moving on to funding framework, and we welcome back Margot. Welcome.
Tinakwe, you actually have 3 of us up here. We also have Roger with us, who's our community funding advisor, and Roger and Margot have been working through this funding framework. And so I'm going to pass over to Margot to talk you through the framework.
Yeah, so our report today recommends the adoption of the Napier City Council Grants and Funding Policy Framework and the accompanying grants and funding guidelines. So the report is the culmination of work that began back in 2021 with a community funding review. You'll all be aware that we got Jenny Giblin and Christine Ennis from Funding HQ on board to finalise the framework, and as part of the process they consulted widely across council, including holding 2 workshops with councillors. In the last 8 months, we have incorporated the review's recommendations and council feedback into the draft document we're presenting. Just to run through the major changes, the funding framework formalises funding processes, including the consolidation of the Community Services Grant and the Community Development Grant into one fund, the Community Initiatives Fund. the establishment of a contestable 3-year community partnerships agreement to replace the current service agreements, clarity for applicants in assessing which fund they are eligible for, a consistent streamlined process for applicants, including uniformed application processes across council. So you will see that there are some other funds that sit outside of the community services team that have been included. Meaningful and appropriate accountability processes, greater transparency, and it also provides clear alignment to council vision, priorities, principles, including the long-term plan. We believe the new framework reflects current best practice for New Zealand funders and aligns Napier City Council with how other councils across the motu are using their grants and funds to achieve positive outcomes for their communities. We've developed a communication plan which we have ready to roll to inform the changes if approved, and we would envisage that the new framework would be in place by 1 July 2025, and we're happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Margot. And I do just want to say I think this is a fantastic piece of work, and that what you're presenting to us is definitely best practice and well and truly a step ahead of what we have been doing historically. So thank you for all of your work on this. One question from me with regards to the council project fund, which you're suggesting a minimum $20,000 grant limit. Just wanting to understand how that has been set, bearing in mind that through our annual plan process we have actually allocated lesser amounts than that in the past.
Yeah, so currently through you to you, currently the council projects fund is set at 30,000. We dropped it to 20 so that the community initiative funds will now go up to 20. So there's a clear funding line so that if people need, they can go up to 20 with community initiatives fund. And then that, once they get to that line, then that is where they would apply to council projects fund. And I think that through the long-term plan, I think we did talk to you about the ability to also steer people in the direction of other funds. So if people were wanting under 20,000, then it would be advising them to go through and look at the community initiatives fund.
Thank you for that. So supplementary question. Some of the previous setup didn't sometimes provide the flexibility to actually make allocations out of those community funds because the applicants didn't meet the criteria. Is there enough flexibility in the new community initiative funds to ensure that that doesn't become a barrier?
I believe that it's now quite a bit broader and also including, which is quite unusual in a fund, the ability for a salary. So if someone is needing a salary for a specific short-term project, then the ability sits within that fund to now do that, which potentially people would have come to council projects funds before.
Final question, I promise. If we ended up in a situation where the community initiative funds had been fully allocated, I guess what I'm trying to ensure is that we don't end up in a position where council elected members, because we only have the ability really to use the council projects fund, I don't want us to be in a position where there's something we really want to support where they actually only need $10,000 and we're only saying no because they only need $10,000. Do we have the discretion in the council projects fund to make a lower allocation?
Well, ultimately, it is your fund. We don't make the decision about that.
Yeah.
So I think we put the 20K in there so that we had that kind of consistency through the funding stream. But I think that, as I said, it is the council. It is the councillor's fund. So. Yeah.
So through the chair, if that's what the council table wants, then we can make sure there is a provision in there. If is 10K the number that you will want? Or
I don't think we have. I don't think we
you have a number. You
I
want
think it's
exception.
just
Okay,
having
we
that
can amend that
discretion.
if we need to.
Yeah.
I'm seeing nodding.
Oh, yeah, sure. No, fine. I just want a question. So.
Yep.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Oh, thank you and congratulations. Well done. This has been a huge piece of work, I know, and we've had a mishmash for some time. We've tried and we haven't been able to come up with anything, so well done. Just a couple of things, and perhaps through you, Madam Mayor, to the Chief Executive. What sort of opportunity would we have to review something like this? I know it's not a bylaw or a policy, but there's a lot of newness in it. There's a different approach in some ways, which looks better, but how would we be able to have another look at that? Or you?
Through the chair, the funding framework recommends it's reviewed in 5 years' time. So the funding things do change over time, so we're recommending reviewed in 5 years.
Cool. Okay, just another couple of things. On page 105, under grants and funding budget, and I think it's the 105 that's on the bottom of the page, on my page anyway, grants and funding budget, it talks about the funding budget is 180 per person per capita is the basis of it. That was set in 2018, and it had been, I think, 160 that was set in 2014. It just seems like it's a long time since that has been changed, and I know we have funding restrictions, but 7 years is a long time to maintain the same basic amount. Did you consider that?
That's not something that can be addressed within this paper, but it's certainly something that you could put forward in an annual plan process, because that would be where we would look to change any of those sorts of rates.
And finally, one other, just a little thing, on page 121, the Community Initiatives Fund, I can find it. It's got a little or in it, which confused me, and under the list of, oh gosh, now I can't find it. Oh, yes, types of funds, the grants program structure types of funds, the Community Initiatives Fund. You've been able to find that? So in that list, the funds contestable for one-off grants up to $20,000. Initiatives applied for must contribute to one or more of council's strategic priorities, address a community need, or is it or all of those underneath, or one of them? Or any of them?
Those two, isn't it?
Or are they all ors?
We think,
just reading.
sorry, through the chair, that looks like a formatting error. Just reading it now, it looks like the 2 bullet points below the or are part of the or. So address the community need, or bring the community together, or be for the benefit of the people of Napier. So I think those 3 are together. And then the following 3 bullet points.
I get it.
Yeah, so that's a formatting error, but we can change
Just a little formatting thing. Thank you. But other than that, well done. I'll definitely be supporting it.
Councillor Crystal.
Just through the mayor, just a couple of things. I know you said you've got communications going out, especially to our service agreement people. I think they're probably the most affected by this at the moment. So just making sure that, they're kind of made aware. And then again, another little question on, this is to do with Public Arts Grant Fund, which is page 130, when it talks about the Arts, Culture and Heritage Manager approved them, and then it says it goes to council. There's actually a step missing. It goes to the Arts Advisory Committee before it comes to council.
I became aware of that just about 10 minutes ago. We wondered about adding a phrase. A phrase could be added in accordance with the processes established for the public arts policy. That would cover that off.
Just they get missed otherwise.
Yes, and I think also to note that there is a footnote there. We included the public arts policy in here because we wanted it to be part of the framework, but it is all under review, and so this part of the guidelines will change once that review happens.
Got it, through the chair. I'm aware, this is a question around the hierarchy of documents, I suppose. So the WMP, which covers the funds that would go into the Waste Minimisation Fund, I'm aware that one of the directions in the draft, which hasn't gone out for consultation yet, so we're still developing, is that the committee are quite keen to have service level agreements or partnership agreements in that going forward. And I know in this, we've only got the ability for grants. Just wondering, I suppose, what the process would be if the WMP was to go through consultation and that's something that comes out in the final document. Is it as straightforward as updating this document in line with the WMP?
I mean, I think definitely in terms of the guidelines, they're living documents. Anything that obviously changes that comes into conflict with what we have written here, you know, naturally we would have to update it.
Thank you.
Oh yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Just a point of clarification on page 97, the second bullet point talking about the consolidated community development grant and community services grants. Is that single fund, is that called the Community Initiatives Fund? Right,
Correct.
thank you.
And it has 2 rounds. Currently, the two funds that it's replacing, the Community Development Fund is open all year round, and possibly not such a well used fund. And the what's the other one? Community. There's so many community funds. The Community Services Grant has 1 funding round a year, and we felt that consolidating them and having 2 funding rounds, one at the beginning of the financial year and then one 6 months in, gave people an opportunity if they had perhaps an event that was coming up.
Any further questions or discussion? I have a mover in, please. Thank you, Councillor Crystal and Councillor Mawson. Would you like to speak to that?
Just thank you everyone for their input into this, and Jenny and her team for all the work they've done. I think it's probably been a long time overdue, this review, and I think it makes some of our grants, condensing them, making it a lot easier for people to work out what they can apply for. And I know a lot of community groups, you know, this is really important to them to be able to continue some of the work they do, and looking forward to seeing, you know, it roll out, the comms roll out to everyone, and how it transpires into people applying, especially with the Smarty grants and being online, having had to go through that process of assessing on the Smarty grants, you know, it makes quite a big difference seeing all that. So thank you, team.
Councillor Mawson.
Yeah, just to, through the chair, just to concur with Councillor Crystal here, and also just, yeah, I mean, you guys did some amazing work there. I mean, 43 pages of awesomeness in our agenda here. That just goes to show it's very thorough, and I'm all for simplifying things and providing clarity. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. Our community will have a bit more understanding of what they can do and stuff. So thank you very much.
Just to speak in favour of it, it's been interesting over the years. You know, we've got the sort of mishmash even now of sort of old grants like the John Close grant, which is to distribute firewood, ham and ale at Christmas time, yay. And now we've got like the Youth Development Fund about empowering youth, those sorts of things, and you've managed to bring all this together. So I've seen a lot of changes from the days when we got, you know, like absolute concrete blocks of papers to read in order to successfully assess what was put in front of us, to Smarty grants, which is the next step. But I think this has brought all that together really well, and look forward to continuing to work with you.
Anyone wishing to speak against the motion? No, yes, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thanks, team. Awesome. Okay, next up, Napier Hastings Joint Governance Structure, Local Alcohol Policy Joint Working Reference Group. And we have Steve here. Welcome, Steve.
Good, everyone. Thank you. I realise I'm standing in the way of your lunch, so lunch break. So this will be fairly quick. The purpose of this report was to seek Council's approval of 3 elected members to represent Napier on the Joint Working Reference Group to proceed with the review of the local alcohol policy. Mayor Wise has kindly nominated Councillor Taylor, Councillor Gregg and Councillor Crystal. And so this paper is seeking approval for those representatives and also asking you to note the structure and terms of reference for the working group that's attached to the paper. This paper follows the future Napier Committee approval of commencement of the local alcohol policy review, proceeding with a Napier City-specific local alcohol policy review, but with the establishment of the joint governance structure with Hastings. So we've been collaborating with Hastings on proceeding with this, and the options are to approve the nominated members or to not approve and make amendments to the draft terms of reference. Our recommendation is to approve the councillors and note the draft terms of reference. Next steps will be a council workshop on the provisions around the local alcohol policy, and I am anticipating that to happen on the 30th of January, hopefully. Happy to take any questions through the chair.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions? No. I have a mover and seconder. Thank you, Councillor Bogue. Councillor Kariha.
I look forward to seeing the local alcohol policy developed. As I've said before, the last time we did one, it took 3 years because of hindrances in the legislation at the time that enabled the liquor industry, and particularly the off licences, to challenge our hours of sale that we'd recommended. So what I'm looking forward to is we're going to be able to, using this committee, we're going to be able to develop a local alcohol policy that genuinely reflects the community's desires about the issues around reducing harm in alcohol.
Any further speakers? Being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Steve.
Then we got this 12:30.
Oh, wish.
Some.
Yeah.
This one here, 12:30 Royal Humane Society.
So, yes, as mentioned earlier, agenda item 8 has been withdrawn, and I am actually going to move us forward to agenda item 18, which is the presentation of the Royal Humane Society medals. And we have our recipients who are about to join us.
Maybe these guys are rostered off.
Andrew's out.
A very warm welcome to our guests, and particularly acknowledging our medal recipients today, Constable Andrew Chantery and Constable Ted Stewart Symes. And of course, you are being awarded the Royal Humane Society of New Zealand medals in recognition of your heroic actions on the 10th of December 2021, when you were involved in the rescue and the tragedy that we had on Marine Parade. We do all have the official citation, which has been circulated with councillors, and I understand you have also received a copy of that. So I won't read it out all in detail, but just wanting to acknowledge your service on behalf of our whole community, both in your daily roles within our New Zealand Police Force, but certainly in this particular Community Act which you undertook in 2021. And it's an absolute honour as the Mayor of Napier to be able to present you with your medals today and be here in front of all your whānau to acknowledge what you have done. So I will invite you both up, and we've got the medals up the front of the table here to give them to you. Say something? Glad I wore heels today. Speak. We might ask you so that you've got a microphone.
Oh,
just to
righto.
pop down
Down here, Phyllis.
Yeah.
and
These
Yeah.
chairs
then
here.
live stream.
Oh, sorry. Back to people, can I do it?
Didn't
Here,
tell you
just
that.
speak
Oh,
up.
so there's a roving.
Oh, true. He wants to
Oh, okay.
this one
Yeah,
here
here we
too.
go.
Yeah.
Hello, just a few thank yous really. First of all, before I forget, because my mind is quite a fleeting place at times, thank you for my family for coming down and sharing this special occasion with me. My daughters were to rush out of our prize giving, where they both made me very proud an hour or so ago, so hopefully you can feel a bit proud of me today now, and thanks to my wife Karen and my daughters Isla and Rhea for coming down. Thank you to the Royal Humane Society for giving us these awards. It means a lot. I'm very proud to accept it. It's obviously kind of a bittersweet moment. We all know that it was a tragic event, but that doesn't take away from how special these awards are to us. So thank you very much to Royal Humane Society. Sorry, I get a bit nervous with all these people looking at me, so forgive my wavering voice. It was great it feels good to be able to help the young folk. Well, I don't know if anyone here knows what sort of happened, but we lost a young chap, a 5-year-old, but there was a civilian, a 19 or 20-year-old, I think he was at the time, that went in after the 5-year-old. He's received an award already with another police officer who went in initially. They got their awards a few months ago in Wellington. So this 20-year-old civilian, he went in. Ted here saw that he was in trouble, and he was in a lot of trouble. Ted here went in after him and did a fantastic job. I spoke to this young chap a few days later after he spent the night in hospital, after he got out of hospital. Jeremy, his name was, and he asked if I was... I just rang him to see how he was going. He asked if I was the first officer who went in. And I said, no, that was Ted. And he said, I owe my life to Ted. He said he was in a lot of trouble. He tried to come in with the surf a few times, got bowled around in the white water. We all know how horrible it is down at the beach there. He said he was knackered. He was on his last legs. Ted went in. It was the voice of calm reassured him. Did the right thing by pulling him back out to sea outside the breakers. Said we're not going to get in. And he credited Ted for saving his life, because he said he would just probably keep trying until he could try no more. And that's a big part of policing, Ted. It's kind of it's being able to talk to people, being able to reassure them, calm them down a bit, and get the result we want. So magic job from Ted. It's me, I think. So thank you to Anne and the council for hosting this. Very special. Very grateful for it, and again to the Royal Humane Society for the awards itself. Thank you.
Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou katoa I tēnei rā. Firstly, I'm pretty much going to repeat a little bit of what Moxie has said. But thank you to my whānau, the support throughout, well, my policing, not just this incident, but my policing. There's stuff that happens that we just brush off, I suppose, but it's a big thing to other people. So thank you very much for that. To Royal Humane Society, thank you very much for the award. I've talked to Banjo, who, the other officer that got in the water first, so Senior Constable Ben Whitley from Gisborne. I've spoken to him many times about it, and a little bit funny getting told you're going to get an award for something. Yeah, where 5-year-olds passed away, I suppose, but hard. But we will always say thank you. But fantastic to get their 5-year-old back for the whānau. So. Moxie missed a bit of that story. The reason why me and Jeremy could get back in is because Moxie turned up with an extension cord from Maraenui Police Station, but that's the only reason why we could get in. We probably would have to stay another 15-20 minutes for a chopper to come, which would have been fine, I think. Moxie probably would have swam out and just waited with us, but it was amazing because the only thing we were saying to Jeremy is hold on to this, do not let it go, no matter how fast you think you're going, just hold on to it. And it was amazing to watch 10 or so police officers run up this beach with this extension cord, and then Jeremy just took off like a torpedo in the old cartoons. So that was fantastic, and then from there it was just for me and Moxie to get out of the water after that. So very important part of it, could get us out of the water. So thank you to Moxie as well. And lastly, big thank you to the Napier City Council for having us here on behalf of the Royal Humane Society, and big thank you.
We will be breaking for lunch now, and we will be having our guests and their whānau join us so that you can introduce yourselves and have a word and thank them in person. But it's just, as I said, and it's an absolute honour to be able to present these medals to you today and acknowledge what you have done. So thank you. And we need to be back at 1:20, please, and lunch is just out in the foyer. To go, so we're back online, everybody. We will have one of our open agenda items prior to going into public excluded, as we have some external parties joining us at 1:30. So welcome Robin, who's going to talk us through the request for additional capital funding for the Inner Harbour and transportation.
Thank you, Your Worship, and apologies for anybody who missed out on lunch. Appreciate the additional time just to talk through this. I do have a couple of amendments to make to the, well, one amendment to make to the report, which is in recommendation B. It'll become clear in a moment, but the last three words, i.e. rates funded loans, that's no longer required. I'll explain a little more in a moment, but I think it's probably most sensible to actually just go through the two activities in turn. So I'll cover the Inner Harbour issue and then go on to the roading requirements. In terms of the Inner Harbour, like I say, I have flagged this verbally in previous meetings, but this is the first formal request for additional funding. It's the Inner Harbour Discharge Wharf on Custom Quay, which we have had suspended from use for about 3-4 months. That was following professional advice that it was at risk of failure or further failure. It's predominantly used by small commercial operations, both for loading and unloading catches, ice, and other provisions. It's also used as an access to one of the floating pontoons up in Joel Wharf. We did have the renewal of the wharf flagged for years 3 and 4 in the long-term plan. Obviously, with the new news coming to light, then we've had to accelerate that. In the process of doing so, it's become clear that the initial estimate that we were provided was nowhere near adequate. So this is a request to bring forward that funding that had already been flagged in the draft annual plan for next year, but there's additional funding on top of that, some of which is in this year to allow us to proceed with professional services, investigations, so on. That is entirely funded from the Hawke's Bay Land Endowment Sales Fund, so there's no impact on rates for that. The only funding impact is obviously that money is now no longer available for future projects sitting in future years. The fund is around about $21 million. $14 million of that allocation is sitting against the Nelson Quay Wharf, and that's in years 8 to 14 of the current plan. So that will have to be revisited and reviewed prior to that being drawn against. Would you like me to take questions on that bit, or are you comfortable with me moving on to the transport bit?
Thank you very much, Robin. Obviously, it's just getting my head around the numbers. That estimate was significantly out.
Yes. So that estimate, the discharge wharf renewal has been sitting in the plan for a number of years. So I think it's probably its second or third iteration at least in the plan. It was based on an assessment done for us in 2018 by the company that evaluated all of our Inner Harbour assets and helped us to form that. So unfortunately, it has shown to be quite small. That said, the number that I've requested here is based on a very high-level conservative estimate at the moment. What we want to make sure is that we've got budget available to do the work without coming back to you. It's a reasonable estimate, but it's not. We're pretty comfortable that it will be less than that in the outturn.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor Wise, this might be a difficult question for you to answer, but is there an easily sort of percentage-wise of the use of it, which is kind of directly commercial benefit? I know it's used a lot by commercial operators, but it has a public good component to it as well. And where I'm getting to is trying to understand whether or not we have any income generation options that we haven't yet realised.
So through you, Madam Mayor, we do get some revenue from berthing that occurs against it. the loading and unloading activities we don't charge for. It's part of the assets that were handed to council in the 1989 Endowment Act, when those assets were split between council and the regional council for the port and the harbour. So there was an expectation that they would be available for use commercially and to support the general industry as a whole. In terms of direct charging for use of that, we haven't ever really investigated any of that.
Thank you. I think,
Sorry, does that answer the question?
if you're happy to take a comment on that, Mayor Wise, I do think that is something that we should ask staff just to investigate if there is
Action around investigating user charges for the commercial activity on the discharge wharf.
Thank you.
Any further questions on the discharge wharf? Transportation.
Hang on to the transportation assets then. So again, this is request for additional funding, which I think we knew we were going to see over the coming years, but the need, I guess, has in some cases come about through the weather events that we've seen over the last few years. Some has just been deterioration, end of life observations and identification that we really need to get on with them. Unfortunately, it has kind of meant that we've now got this kind of pile, which it feels that would be sensible to address. One of the projects, which is Coot Lucy Road, that is eligible for NZTA funding under the Gabrielle funding. So that's, if we can get anything done before Christmas, then we get 91%. Anything else will only be eligible for 51%. So that's why there's that variability noted in the revenue stream. It'll be somewhere between that 200,000 and 360,000. So just to jump to the funding area, I have got some focus in the report there on the funding impacts of those components, and probably resulting in some sort of accounting gymnastics trying to offset any impact on rates. Very aware, obviously, we've got a very large programme and you've just been through the process of agreeing those rates, so I'm trying to avoid any impact there. I have subsequently, the finance team have been able to confirm with me that the Renewal Reserves Fund has adequate balance to cover these works, so there is no loans rates component, and therefore obviously no impact when we start repaying those loans. So the funding section, the second paragraph there, is not particularly relevant anymore, and as I say, there's that sort of last three words of the second recommendation, which I've spoken to Caroline and asked her to remove before you consider it. In terms of deliverability, obviously we've got a very large capital programme both this year and next, and I can probably reassure you that most of the officer time has already been invested on most of these projects. Most of them are already designed, approved, with consent where required. There's only one of the jobs still requires finishing off there. So we have looked at it, and we don't believe that it will actually negatively impact the ability of council to deliver what the expectation is for them to deliver over the next 2 years. So unless there are any questions.
Thank you, Robin. Just with regards to the Lucy Road one, which is connected to the NIWI funding, so does the project have to be completed to qualify for the 91%?
No, and any expenditure that we undertake by the end of the year, so whatever's in our claim for December, and we are getting the contractor to go as quickly as they possibly can.
Okay. Yeah. Any further questions? Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, just to avoid future surprises, these are clearly council assets, so we have asset management plans that cover these items. So is there something particular that has brought these projects forward against what the asset management plan might have been suggesting around the renewals and constructions? And the second part to my question is then, will the design work and the construction work be done in which financial years?
So through you, Madam Mayor, I guess the asset management for a lot of these retaining wall assets is fairly immature. It's only since I've been here that we've actually even gone out and discovered what all these walls were. They weren't even in council's records prior to 2008. We are still dealing with uncertainties around ownership and liabilities because almost all of them are on boundaries, and I guess the genesis, the origin of a lot of these walls isn't particularly clear who the beneficiary is of having the wall. Further to that, they're also very hard to inspect a lot of the time. As I mentioned in the report, a huge percentage of them will be above or past their design lives, but most are still fairly robust, fairly solid, and on inspection you can kind of see that there are some issues, but they're still structurally pretty good. It's probably a matter of resourcing as much as anything. It's a significant expense to go out and actually do the inspections on all of these. It's not capability that's super readily available at the moment. It's geotechnical, structural assessments, and visual inspections don't always tell you everything either. So it is unfortunately a little bit of a reaction game rather than a forward planning game. I'd very much like to be ahead of that curve, but realistically, we've still got a long way to go on that.
And further to that, Councillor Simpson, I could refer you to agenda item 3 in the Audit and Risk Committee, which lays out the asset management roadmap progress and the work that's being done around investing and improving our asset management.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Apologies, bit of a procedural error on my behalf. Just the wider context, I potentially have a conflict in the broader conversation of this, so if I can just excuse myself from this paper. All good. Any
Happy to
further
move.
questions?
Happy to move?
Move, yep.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Seconder, Councillor Mawson, thank you. To speak to that.
Just the discharge wharf needs to be done as soon as possible because it's a little bit messy down around there, and it's good to see some of the slips on the hill. Going to have some action taken against them because we certainly get a lot of feedback about people not liking them. So, all good stuff.
Thank you. Councillor Mawson.
Yeah, nothing to it.
Any further speakers? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Fabulous. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very
Risha.
much, Robin. Okay, so we're going to move into public excluded now. If I could have a mover and a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Price, Deputy Mayor Brosnan. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried.